Chapter 2603, Overestimating Oneself. That's Solitary Frost's stage. Why is Silent Wonder going there? She's going to challenge Solitary Frost. Challenge Solitary Frost? Is she insane? The players that had been competing for the 8th stage paused, watching Silent Wonder approach the 1st stage. They were all curious to see what she planned to do. Second sister. Even Burning Owl was confused as he watched. Even if Silent Wonder wanted to secure one of the top 8 positions, she shouldn't have started with Solitary Frost. Solitary Frost had always been stronger than the rest of Azure's younger generation, and now, after his training with Violet Sword, he was on a completely different level. Anyone that challenged Solitary Frost would only waste one of their opportunities. Yan Xiaoqian was just as astonished as she watched Silent Wonder from her position on the 2nd stage. She might not have been surprised to see the Long family's Silk Moon challenge Solitary Frost, since she would actually have a chance of winning, but why would Silent Wonder challenge that monster of a player? This competition wasn't like the previous alchemy competition. They weren't fighting monsters this time, and superior levels and equipment couldn't help Silent Wonder here. On these 8 stages, everyone's basic attributes would be the same. Players would have to rely on their combat standards and techniques to win. Silent Wonder could never be a match for Solitary Frost in these aspects. Meanwhile, the audience was in an uproar as it watched Silent Wonder. The Long family's elders and grand elders in particular, anxiously sat on the edge of their seats. They had, more or less, given up any hope of securing one of the top 3 spots. They only hoped that Burning Owl could hold 4th place, and Silent Wonder would make it into the top 8. They could, to a certain extent, avoid embarrassment if 2 of their representatives ranked among the top 8 fighters. Whether or not the Long family retained its ruling rights over the Azure Chamber of Commerce would depend on Silent Wonder's obedience in training with Violet Sword. As long as she did, the Zeus Corporation would stop meddling in Azure's affairs, and the family would be safe. And yet, the foolish girl was about to waste one of her challenge opportunities on Solitary Frost. That girl is quite brave, Sinful Flame muttered, praising Silent Wonder as she stepped onto the 1st stage. Solitary Frost, on the other hand, showed no appreciation for Silent Wonder's courage. Rather, he seemed to look down on her. To challenge me directly, it seems you've improved quite a bit in Zero Wing, Wonder, Solitary Frost said coldly. The selection for the 8 finalists had just begun, yet Silent Wonder had chosen to challenge him now. If she were truly powerful, she would be more than capable of facing off against him in the main event. By choosing him now, she was declaring to every player in the arena that he was an easy opponent. Essentially, she was trying to humiliate him. Him. I have indeed improved in Zero Wing, so I'd like to test my limits on you, Silent Wonder honestly replied, nodding. I guess you're serious, then, Solitary Frost reasoned, his anger subsiding as he realized that Silent Wonder wanted to fight him in earnest, not make fun of him. His expression shifted, becoming serious, and he pulled the silver greatsword from its sheath across his back. In that case, show me how much you've grown in your little guild. Thank you. Silent Wonder offered the words of gratitude, knowing Solitary Frost would take her seriously. There's no need for that. I appreciate all true challengers. I hope you won't disappoint me. During my training with Violet Sword, only Yan Xiaoqian withstood a few of my moves. The rest of our generation was too boring and weak to make me work for my victory, Solitary Frost said. By the time Solitary Frost finished his last statement, Sinful Flame had arrived in the center of the stage. Since you both agree, let the match begin, the older man announced after taking a good look at the 2 youngsters. A roar of excitement swept through the spectator stands when the crowd heard Sinful Flame announce the start of the match. They had never thought Solitary Flame would take Silent Wonder's challenge seriously, and they couldn't contain their enthusiasm. And here I thought I'd have to wait until the main event to watch a Solitary Frost and Burning Owl duke it out. Thanks to Silent Wonder, I'll get to watch Solitary Frost in a serious battle now. I wonder how many minutes Silent Wonder will last. Minutes? Aren't you giving her a little too much credit? I doubt even Burning Owl will last more than 10 moves against Solitary Frost. The various powers members had heard plenty about Solitary Frost. Many of them had even come just to see how powerful the boy, who had fought the famous Wildfighter to a standstill, was. Wildfighter was a legend among berserkers, and getting a chance to see such an individual in action was almost impossible. However, if Solitary Frost fought with all he had, they could get a feel for how strong Wildfighter was. Once Sinful Flame had initiated the match on the first stage, Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder moved to their designated positions and prepared for battle. I've heard that Yan Xiaoqian used to consider you a rival. In that case, I'll use the same move that defeated her against you. I hope you're ready. Solitary Frost wanted Silent Wonder, who stood 40 yards away. Suddenly, the young man split into 4 clones of himself. All 4 figures were identical and radiated similar auras, making them impossible to tell apart. The doppelgangers then split up and surrounded Silent Wonder. Are you kidding me? Solitary Frost is using 4 absolute phantoms so soon. The female, Tier 3 assassin said from one of the other 7 stages, her jaw dropping as she watched Solitary Frost treat Silent Wonder as a true opponent. Yan Xiaoqian, who stood on the stage next to Solitary Frost's, revealed a grim expression, as well. Solitary Frost's 4 absolute phantoms was an incredible challenge to overcome for magical class players like her. The 4 doppelgangers weren't altogether fakes. One could only deal damage to Solitary Frost by attacking all 4 at once, and that wasn't the move's most frightening aspect. The true danger lay in the fact that Solitary 9 could control all of his doppelgangers with as much precision as he controlled his own body. Using doppelgangers in combat was immensely difficult in God_S domain. Controlling 2 bodies simultaneously would even reduce a peak expert's combat power. Ordinary domain realm experts would be lucky if they could control 3 bodies without sacrificing some of their performance. However, Solitary Frost could control all 4 doppelgangers without reducing any of their combat power. Of course, landing an attack against a domain realm expert without using a skill or spell was just as difficult. Domain realm experts could perceive all movement within their vicinity, after all. Relying on their keen senses, they could preemptively evade and launch counterattacks. Fighting Solitary Frost's 4 absolute phantoms would be as challenging as facing 4 domain realm experts simultaneously. For peak experts, this move was an absolute nightmare. And once a magical class player allowed a melee player, especially a domain realm expert, to move within attack range, it was game over. Amazing! Silent Wonder exclaimed, admiring Solitary Frost's perfect control. Face my 4 absolute phantoms. Silent Wonder's admiration wouldn't slow Solitary Frost down, and his 4 doppelgangers encircled their opponent, rapidly closing in. While Solitary Frost's doppelgangers drew closer, Silent Wonder began to wave her staff. 4 ice walls shot up from the stage around her, protecting her from all sides. Ice walls? She doesn't actually think such a low-tier defensive spell can stop Solitary Frost's attack, does she? The female assassin couldn't help but laugh. The spell, Ice Wall, could only be enhanced to Tier 2. It wasn't anywhere near strong enough to stop a Tier 3 player's full-powered attack. The spell wouldn't even buy Silent Wonder any time. Boring. Silent Wonder's opening move disappointed Solitary Frost a little, but he didn't pause his assault. He immediately cancelled his 4 absolute phantoms before brandishing his greatsword. The weapon transformed into 3 identical copies before converging on the ice wall before him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Combat Technique, Triple Heavy Slash. Boom! As the greatsword crashed into the ice wall, a deafening boom filled the arena. How is that possible? Solitary Frost was stunned when his attack failed to deal any damage to the ice wall. Moreover, the recoil had left both of his arms numb as if he had just struck an impenetrable wall. Chapter 2604, Fully Unlocked Mana Body. The audience was befuddled when they saw Solitary Frost's attack come to a grinding halt. It didn't break. But, isn't it only a Tier 2 defensive spell? Did Solitary Frost mess up his attack? The players in the spectator stands were all extremely familiar with the spell, Ice Wall. Before players had reached Tier 3, elementalists had used the spell to help protect their MTs from Great Lord ranked bosses' attacks. However, both Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder were both bona fide Tier 3 players. Although their basic attributes had been equalized, they both had the attributes of Tier 3 players. A Tier 2 Ice Wall could, at most, buffer a Tier 3 attack. It shouldn't be able to stop such a blow, let alone one empowered with a combat technique. A Tier 2 Ice Wall can actually stop a Tier 3 Berserker's combat technique at full strength? Burning Owl was just as confused as everyone else after seeing Silent Wonder's Ice Wall intact. He had fought Tier 3 elementalists himself, but when they had used Ice Wall against him, the spell hadn't even stopped his normal attacks. He had tested this multiple times and never once failed to shatter an ice wall. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoqian stared at Silent Wonder in astonishment. Mana! Yan Xiaoqian exclaimed, sensing the dense mana radiating from Silent Wonder. She's already unlocked her mana body's full potential. Yan Xiaoqian wasn't the only magical class player to notice the sudden spike in mana around Silent Wonder. The only explanation any of them could think of was that the elementalist had fully unlocked her mana body. She actually unlocked her mana body. Amazing! Not even the super guilds have any members with a fully unlocked mana body yet. It seems my trip here wasn't in vain. I'll get to watch an expert with a fully unlocked mana body in battle. Everyone in the spectators' stands began to talk about Silent Wonder. Their opinions of her had all changed. Rather than seeing her as just another member of Azure's younger generation, they saw her as a true powerhouse. Ha ha ha. Good. Wonderful. We might actually have a chance of claiming one of the top 3 positions now. Long Wushang, who sat among the audience, laughed joyously as he watched Silent Wonder. After failing to contact Silk Moon, the Long family had given up any hope of securing one of the top 3 positions in this competition. Now that they knew Silent Wonder had unlocked her mana body's full potential, however, securing one of those spots was almost certain. There was a massive strength difference between an expert with a fully unlocked mana body and one without. Tier 3 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies were almost half a tier stronger than ordinary Tier 3 experts. Every participant in this competition, excluding Solitary Frost, had, at most, reached the Void Realm. Although Silent Wonder had only reached the half-step Void Realm standard, she could easily defeat Void Realm experts with this advantage. Not even Yan Xiaoqian, who was only a step away from the Void Realm, would be a match for her. You've fully unlocked your mana body. Solitary Frost's fighting spirit flared, a passionate flame dancing in his eyes, when he looked at Silent Wonder behind the ice walls. It's no wonder why you were bold enough to challenge me. I've never fought an expert with a fully unlocked mana body, so show me how powerful it truly is. The Berserker raised his greatsword and leaped into the air, aiming for the one area where Silent Wonder didn't have an ice wall's protection. Advanced Combat Technique, 7 consecutive flashes. The greatsword transformed into 7 streaks of light, covering the entire area within the ice walls and leaving Silent Wonder no room to dodge. In response, Silent Wonder used Blink, immediately appearing 30 yards away and evading Solitary Frost's attack. With a wave of her staff, she then summoned over a dozen magical arrays around her opponent. The arrays released a barrage of flame spears, each with enough power to rival a Grand Lord of the same level. As if Solitary Frost had anticipated this move, he tightened his grip on his greatsword and twisted in the air. Tier 3 Skill, Berserk Dance. Solitary Frost rapidly rotated in the air, his greatsword leaving arcs of crimson light in its wake that blocked the incoming flame spears. He executed Berserk Dance with over a 90% completion rate even from that position. Is he a monster? Shocked, Burning Owl stared at the crimson sword lights surrounding Solitary Frost. While Tier 3 skills were quite powerful, achieving a high completion rate with them was very difficult. Even as a Void Realm expert, Burning Owl could only execute the Tier 3 Berserk Dance with around an 85% completion rate, and that was only with optimal conditions. Despite activating the skill in midair, however, Solitary Frost's completion rate was over 90%. Meanwhile, Just as Solitary Frost was about to land, earthen spikes shot up from the ground below him. A two-pronged assault. That might be useful against peak experts, but it will do nothing against Solitary Frost, the female assassin standing on the nearby stage said, sneering at the magical attack. A domain realm expert could perceive everything within their surroundings. Even a perfectly timed ambush would be useless against such an expert. The instant they took action, the targeted domain realm expert would discover the attack. Still calm, the berserker brandished his greatsword and shattered the first round of earthen spikes. He then used his momentum to evade the second wave of spikes. Landing, Solitary Frost used Flame Charge, dashing towards Silent Wonder. Rather than make a beeline for his target, however, he combined a complex footwork technique with his charge. The berserker split into 6 afterimages, rushing towards Silent Wonder from different directions. Advanced footwork, Mirage Steps. His execution was flawless, and the afterimages were impossible to tell apart. In a fraction of a second, he was within 15 yards of the elementalist. It's over. Your mana body might have tremendously increased your casting speed and power, but you lack control of your surroundings. You still can't use your advantage to its fullest. Solitary Frost roared as he moved within 10 yards of Silent Wonder. He then swung his greatsword. Tier 3 Taboo Skill, Triple Flame Scythe. 3 flaming crescents threatened to devour Silent Wonder with even more power than that of a Grand Lord of the same level. But, just before the attack landed, a gigantic, crimson magic array appeared beneath Silent Wonder's and Solitary Frost's feet. The instant the array completed, a towering pillar of fire exploded forth. Not only did the flames swallow the 3 flaming crescents, but it devoured Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder, as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. What? A 3-pronged attack. She actually hit a red lotus of fire beneath her. Yan Shaoqian could not believe her eyes as she stared at the raging pillar of fire before her. Yan Shaoqian had assumed her rival had only prepared a 2-pronged attack. She had never dreamed that Silent Wonder would use herself as bait to lure Solitary Frost into the red lotus of fire, a Tier 3 curse. After 3 seconds, the flaming pillar subsided, revealing Solitary Frost's charred corpse on the stage. Although Silent Wonder hadn't emerged from her own attack unscathed, she still had 1/3 of her HP remaining due casting Flame Shield earlier. I might not have a good grasp on my surroundings, but when it comes to power and technique, I'm much stronger than you. Silent Wonder told the berserker's motionless corpse. From above the stage, a bell rang, signifying the end of the match. At the same time, the system announced Silent Wonder as the victory, momentarily silencing the stunned crowd. Chapter 2605, Spiritualization Realm appears once more, Solitary Frost lost. This is a joke, right? He even rivals Wildfighter. A player can become so strong after fully unlocking their mana body. Silent Wonder's victory flabbergasted everyone. There were quite a few peak experts in the audience, as well as some domain realm experts. Hence, they hadn't had any trouble seeing and understanding what had happened in the battle between Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder. They were certain that Silent Wonder hadn't reached the Void Realm, and there was a massive difference between her and Solitary Frost. Even if her casting speed and spell power had greatly improved, thanks to unlocking her mana body's full potential, logically, Solitary Frost should have been able to bridge the gap by relying on his superior combat standards when their basic attributes were on the same level. In fact, despite not being a match for the Elementalist head-on, Solitary Frost had evaded all of her attacks and targeted Silent Wonder's weak points during the first half of the match. In the end, however, Solitary Frost had still lost. How were they supposed to wrap their minds around this? Second Sister won, just like that. Burning Owl was just as stunned as the players in the audience. He had thought that even if Silent Wonder was no match for Solitary Frost, no one else among Azure's younger generation could take on his second eldest sister. With her here, the Long family was practically guaranteed to retain its ruling rights in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. But he hadn't actually expected Silent Wonder to defeat Solitary Frost. Now, The other shareholder families had lost any excuse to threaten the Long family's position. Not even the Zeus Corporation would be able to complain about the family. Excellent. Magnificently done. Long Wushang was elated to see Silent Wonder still standing on the first stag. Never dreamed that she'd be capable of launching a three-pronged attack against Solitary Frost. Not even his third eldest brother, Long Xianglong, would have the leeway to execute such a complex tactic against a domain realm expert. Long Wushang had assumed Silent Wonder would lose the match. He had never expected such a pleasant surprise. With this victory, Silent Wonder was now the strongest member of Azure's younger generation. Even if the Long family lost the Zeus Corporation's support, this achievement would ensure that the family wouldn't have to worry about its position in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Now, the family's position was stronger than ever before. Just how did she manage to pinpoint her environment and opponent's behavior? Yan Shaoqian muttered, staring at Silent Wonder. As a magical class player herself, Yan Shaoqian knew Silent Wonder hadn't relied on luck to win the match. She had planned every move before the match had even begun. Although magical class players typically predicted their battle's progression beforehand, she had never seen anyone assess their opponent to such an extent. Silent Wonder's final move had been especially eye-opening since she had taken into account how much damage her Tier 3 course would deal to her and her opponent. It was as if she had orchestrated the entire battle. Silent Wonder looked like a completely different person to Yan Shaoqian right now. Her rival certainly hadn't shown such abilities during the alchemy competition. While everyone grumbled about their confusion and dissatisfaction over Silent Wonder's marvelous performance, Sinful Flame gazed up at the girl from below the stage, excitement flashing in his eyes. Is something wrong, Elder Flame? A Tier 3 guild elder, who acted as the deputy referee for this competition, asked when he saw Sinful Flame's elation. Sinful Flame had seemed bored when he had been tasked to host the family competition this year. He actually found the responsibility annoying, yet he now seemed excited and interested in a younger member of the guild. It was unbelievable. Sinful Flame had been unfazed when he learned that Solitary Frost had reached the domain realm. Silent Wonder, on the other hand, hadn't even gotten that far. Although she had unlocked her mana body's full potential, she shouldn't be impressive enough to attract someone like Sinful Flame's interest. While unlocking one's mana body was a difficult endeavor for ordinary Tier 3 experts, it was only a matter of time for an expert of Sinful Flame's caliber. He was actually quite close to unlocking 100%, and would likely succeed in another 2 weeks or so. Hence, he shouldn't consider fully unlocking one's mana body that much of an achievement. The Spiritualization Realm. She's reached the Spiritualization Realm, and she's made considerable progress in it. Sinful Flame declared. It seems the younger generation is full of exceptional geniuses. The Spiritualization Realm? The Tier 3 elder was confused. He had no idea what Sinful Flame was going on about. Before the elder could ask, however, Sinful Flame jumped onto the stage and approached Silent Wonder. Isn't the match over already? What's Elder Flame trying to do? Was there a problem with the match? The spectators were even more confused to see Sinful Flame on the stage. Normally, the system decided a match's outcome. Its judgment was far more accurate than players', after all. If both opponents died by the end of the match, the system could determine whether they had died at the same time or if there had even been a millisecond between their deaths. No player could do the same. This was why players relied on the main God system to judge all matches in God's domain, barring special circumstances. However, the results of Solitary Frost and Silent Wonder's match was clear. There was no chance either of them could have cheated since players weren't allowed to use berserk skills or tools on the stage. Players weren't even allowed to use the additional active skills they gained from their weapons and equipment. Hence, there shouldn't be any dispute over the outcome. However, the crowd began to doubt the fact as they watched the famous Sinful Flame take the stage. He would be able to spot far more details than they could, after all. Sinful Flame doesn't intend to deny the match's result, does he? The situation began to make Long Wushang nervous. We're talking about the system's judgment. Silent Wonder's performance had involved many surprising aspects. If Sinful Flame had seen some peculiarity, his celebration would have been premature. Could she have actually cheated? In contrast, Duan Hanshan was overjoyed to see Sinful Flame interfere. He had thought his hopes of dethroning the Long family were lost, but it seemed that might not have been the case. While everyone discussed the matter in hushed whispers, Sinful Heart turned away from silent wonder and addressed the audience. Everyone, you have seen the match's outcome for yourselves, so you all know just how powerful Solitary Frost was. Without a doubt, he is the participant in this competition, Sinful Flame said. Now that Silent Wonder has defeated him, I'm sure you all realize who will win first place. Hence, I have a suggestion. Rather than waste time with the rest of the qualifying matches, why don't we host a more meaningful competition? Indeed. It doesn't make much sense to continue the qualifying matches. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, going straight into the main event isn't a bad idea. It's a pity that the first match was the most interesting. My seat isn't even warm, yet the competition is already over. Every player in the crowd nodded, agreeing to Sinful Flame's suggestion. Since Silent Wonder had proven herself stronger than Solitary Frost, the top 8 positions were as good as decided. Continuing the qualifying matches would be pointless. It would be much more interesting to proceed to the Peak Experts matches. Since Silent Wonder is the undisputed first-place winner of this competition, according to our regulations, I will face her later. How would you all feel about watching that match? Sinful Flame asked the crowd once the audience had agreed to his first suggestion. Chapter 2606, There are many who are stronger than me. Sinful Flame's question shocked every member of the audience. What? Sinful Flame is actually eager to fight Silent Wonder? He hadn't seemed very interested in when he had expected to face Solitary Frost, yet he looks like he's looking forward to the fight with Silent Wonder. Just how strong is she to get a reaction like this from him? Could Sinful Flame intend to learn more about his mana body by fighting Silent Wonder? The man's sudden suggestion took everyone by surprise. Although Silent Wonder's combat power had been astonishing, her combat standards were significantly weaker than Solitary Frost's, not to mention Sinful Flame. The only advantage she had was her fully unlocked mana body. That advantage was also the only reason anyone could think of that would pull such a reaction from Sinful Flame. Even now, no one knew how many experts with fully unlocked mana bodies the various superpowers had, if any. Most of the superpowers Tier 3 experts hadn't even begun to unlock their mana bodies. Of course, one might make some progress if they fought a player who had unlocked their mana body's full potential. What is Sinful Flame thinking? He's challenging a junior. Duan Hanshan could only glare at Sinful Flame, furious over the man's spontaneous act. Silent Wonder's victory over Solitary Frost had already boosted the Long family's prestige. The outcome practically ensured the family would retain its right to rule over Azure. By challenging Silent Wonder, Sinful Flame would only elevate the Long family's reputation further. This would definitely drive many of the guild's neutral elders and grand elders to the Long family's side. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoqian stared from a nearby stage, similarly stunned. How did things turn out like this? When at combat, Yan Xiaoqian had always been more talented than Silent Wonder. After training with Violet Sword, she had even grown beyond seeing Silent Wonder as a serious opponent. However, it turned out that she had been seriously overestimating her abilities. Not only was Silent Wonder much stronger than her, but one of Azure's old legendary individuals also wanted to challenge the Elementalist. This won't do. I must stop him. Otherwise, the Long family will become unstoppable in Azure. Duan Hanshan snarled, quickly contacting the competition's deputy referee. Just as the deputy referee, an elder working under the Duan family, was about to interfere, the spectators broke into cheers. You have my support, Sinful Flame. Stop wasting time and get this started. While I wouldn't have minded watching Solitary Frost face Sinful Flame, seeing the old man fight an expert with a fully unlocked mana body will be awesome. This is beyond awesome. This will go down in God's Domain's history as a classic match. We'll get to see them pit power against technique. After their momentary shock over Sinful Flame's proposal, the various spectating powers members fervently voiced their support for his decision. Many people even began to shout, demanding Sinful Flame begin his match against Silent Wonder immediately. Good. Since the audience approves, what of our various elders? Sinful Flame asked, turning to address the various shareholder families' elders and grand elders, who were in the midst of trying to stop him. The audience followed his gaze, staring at the elders and grand elders, silencing them into complacency. If they dared to refuse Sinful Flame, they'd have to answer to everyone in the arena. Damn it! Sinful Flame is insane. Duan Hanshan turned ashen when he heard Sinful Flame's nonchalant question. Forget it. Let them fight, a white-haired old man in black robes said as he approached Duan Hanshan. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, in any case. Sinful Flame might have raised that little girl's standing, but if he kills her instantly, all of the glory the Long family just gained will be forgotten. Realizing the old man was right, Duan Hanshan and the various families' grand elders stopped trying to object. Since Elder Flame and the audience are so eager, this will be simple, Duan Hanshan said after calming down. He then looked at Sinful Flame and said, however, we need Wonder's agreement first. She just finished a match, and I'm afraid fighting a senior such as yourself so soon after. Sinful Flame nodded in response. His goal was very simple, he wanted to fight Silent Wonder. Some things could only be experienced firsthand, after all. He wanted to face the girl at her peak. However, before Sinful Flame could speak up, a crisp voice interrupted him. I'm fine. Besides, I'd actually enjoy a proper fight against Elder Flame to test the extent of my development, Silent Wonder said. Long Wushang, who watched from the stands, began to grow nervous. Why is this girl so foolish? That old ice demon is clearly provoking her. Anxiously, Long Wushang said, this won't do. I need to warn her. Even if the elders gave Silent Wonder some time to recuperate, it wouldn't be long, and even if she recovered all of the stamina and mana she had used during the prior match, her concentration couldn't recover that quickly. In a battle between high-caliber experts, concentration was more important than anything. Without her full concentration, this match might end as quickly as it began. If that happened, the glory Silent Wonder had earned for her family with her last victory would vanish. Long Wushang didn't have enough time to contact Silent Wonder before Sinful Flame returned his attention to the young woman, however. Girl, while your fight with Solitary Frost was short, you expended a considerable amount of your concentration. I wish to fight you at your peak. I don't want to fight just for the sake of winning. I won't fight you in such a state. You best take some time to rest, Sinful Flame calmly said. Please, rest assured, Elder Flame. My match with Solitary Frost hadn't cost much effort. I don't need to rest, Silent Wonder definitively replied. Meanwhile, Solitary Frost, who had just resurrected below the stage, nearly fainted from rage. How arrogant! Silent Wonder was far too cocky. Even the spectating crowd seemed displeased with Silent Wonder's comment. While her match with Solitary Frost hadn't lasted long, it had been a soul-stirring battle, yet Silent Wonder spoke as if she hadn't given it her all. While it's good to be confident, Wonder, I don't want to hear any excuses when you lose too quickly, Duan Hanshan warned her softly. You worry too much, Elder Hanshan. A loss is a loss. I won't offer any excuses. Moreover, I haven't had enough training. There are many people in the guild who are stronger than me, even though we're the same age, so defeat wouldn't be unusual for me, Silent Wonder said. With her statement hanging in the air, the entire arena fell silent. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, Silent Wonder is so already strong, yet she's saying that Zero Wing has members that are even stronger and around the same age? A boast. She must be boasting. The various super guilds don't even have many players that can rival Solitary Frost, much less Silent Wonder. That's right. Zero Wing might be quite famous in the East, but it shouldn't be able to nurture talents as well as super guilds. Azure's various shareholder families refused to believe Silent Wonder's claim, glaring contemptuously at her. Since that is the case, I have a suggestion. Seeing as Wonder's concentration hasn't fully recovered, why don't we send one of Zero Wing's young talents in her place? I'm sure Elder Flame will still benefit, and didn't she just say that her guild has plenty of youngsters that are even stronger than her? Duan Han suggested, sneering at Silent Wonder. Chapter 2607, Zero Wing's Young Talent. When Duan Han finished speaking, the arena fell silent again. None of them had ever dreamed that he'd suggest such a thing. Vicious. Truly vicious. It'll be very hard for Silent Wonder to take back her claim now. It's her own fault for boasting. She actually gave Old Ice Demon a chance to strike. I wonder if she'll stick by what she said. Zero Wing must be freaking out right about now. Azure's various shareholder families snickered at the young woman on the first stage. They acknowledged that she had become much stronger than they were, but excessive bragging was annoying. The family's younger members found it particularly obnoxious. These younger members hadn't had anything against Silent Wonder, but now that she had insulted them, they were eager to watch her make a fool of herself. Meanwhile, excitement shot through the audience like lightning. They couldn't wait to see how Silent Wonder would get herself out of this predicament. This is interesting. Zero Wing is the guild that arrived aboard a flying ship, right? I wonder if Zero Wing is as strong as Silent Wonder claims. If it is, this upcoming match will be quite a spectacle. It's definitely just an empty boast. Silent Wonder will likely fumble as she tries to take back her words. I doubt we'll see a match between Zero Wing and Sinful Flame. Sinful Flame is a legend in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. The fact that he's willing to face one of Azure's up-and-coming talents is already a miracle. He'll likely refuse to fight an outsider. Curious, the audience turned to Sinful Flame. Sinful Flame was quite famous in the virtual gaming world, but he rarely fought other players. The challenge he had issued Silent Wonder was already an incredibly rare opportunity. Trying to convince him to fight an unknown outsider would likely be a major challenge. As everyone expected Sinful Flame to refuse, he turned to Silent Wonder and asked in earnest, "Are you telling the truth?" The crowd turned their gaze to Silent Wonder. This was her chance to retract her previous statement. If she claimed it had been a joke, she could get away with just a little embarrassment, but if she insisted, her prestige would go down the drain. It's true. If Elder Flame doesn't mind, you can challenge one of them, Silent Wonder said, nodding. Everyone shook their heads in disapproval. Sinful Flame had given her an opportunity to save herself, yet she chose to stick with her claim to elevate Zero Wing's reputation. Ha ha ha. Xiao Qian, Silent Wonder must really be insane. Does she think Zero Wing is God? Does she think that just any random young talent can fight Elder Flame? The female, Tier 3 assassin said, laughing. However, Yan Xiaoqian, who stood on the stage next to the female assassins, did not respond. She knew that Zero Wing indeed possessed a monster capable of fighting Sinful Flame. That person was Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame. Black Flame was an individual that even Adolf, the light saint of Divine Tribe, had to treat prudently. If Black Flame wished to salvage Zero Wing's reputation, he might actually face Sinful Flame. While Silent Wonder's reply surprised the crowd, Sinful Flame's eyes glowed with excitement. He then turned his gaze towards Zero Wing's members and asked, "May I know if anyone from Zero Wing is willing to take Wonder's place?" Sinful Flame's question hadn't been loud, but every word was laced with determination and power. He was obviously serious, and there was even a hint of anticipation in his tone. What? They're really going to fight? This is interesting. I wonder who Zero Wing will send. I've heard that Zero Wing's guild leader is extremely powerful, despite being relatively young. He is also one of the top 30 experts on the God's Domain experts list. It would be awesome if these two fought each other. The audience was beside itself, all too eager to watch the upcoming match. Everyone looked up to the top 30 experts on the God's Domain experts list. However, most players didn't get the chance to meet these experts, let alone watch a match between two of them. God's domain was incredibly large, and barring special circumstances, the top 30 experts rarely crossed paths. The various major powers in the spectator stands weren't the only ones curious to see who Zero Wing would send to face Sinful Flame. Duan Hanshan was just as interested. In Duan Hanshan's opinion, the only person Zero Wing could send was Black Flame. During the alchemy competition, Black Flame had shocked everyone with his identity as a Tier 3 Sword King. Even the Long family's Long Xianglong had been forced to admit defeat. Since he had reached Tier 3 far sooner than anyone else, he was incredibly powerful. Based on appearances, Black Flame shouldn't be much older than Silent Wonder. Normally, as Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame wouldn't casually take action, but he might accept Sinful Flame's challenge to protect his guild's reputation. He was, after all, the only member of Zero Wing who could put up a fight. During the time the Long family and Duan family wondered if Black Flame would make a move, Shifeng turned to the lithe figure beside him. "Violet, go fight him." "Understood." After a brief conversation, the woman beside Shifeng bounced down from the spectator stands and onto the stage. She radiated the sacred aura unique to clerics. Is Zero Wing looking down on Sinful Flame? They're sending a cleric to fight? Everyone was shocked as they watched Violet Cloud make her way to join Sinful Flame on the stage. They never thought that Zero Wing would pull such a move. Even Azure's various shareholder families were astonished. Zero Wing was insane. While the cleric class played a role in combat, battle wasn't the class's priority. Sending a cleric against Sinful Flame, Azure's publicly acknowledged strongest member, was a mockery. Although Violet Cloud hid her statistics with a black cloak, she didn't bother to conceal her appearance. Everyone could clearly see that she was much younger than Silent Wonder, still a teenager. Not only had Zero Wing sent a cleric to face Sinful Flame, but she was also just a young girl. This was a blatant insult. Zero Wing is dead for sure now. Even if Silent Wonder's boast is true, does the guild have to send such a young lady to fight? Elder Flame must be furious. The female, Tier 3 assassin covered her eyes with a hand. She could bear to watch what would happen next. Sinful Flame had always been a serious fighter, and to improve his skills, he pushed himself so hard that others thought him a lunatic. One could easily imagine how enraged Sinful Flame must be with Zero Wing mocking his strength. The man would definitely vent his anger out on Violet Cloud with a good beating. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Sinful Flame chose this moment to release his aura, which burst from him, spreading to his surroundings like a powerful tsunami and threatening to devour all in its path. Even Solitary Frost, who stood below the stage, felt suffocated as he bathed in Sinful Flame's aura. "So, this is our guild's strongest expert." Solitary Frost could not help his grin when he sensed the elder man's killing intent. Solitary Frost had assumed that he could put up a good fight, even if he couldn't defeat Sinful Flame. In this competition's matches, the fighter's basic attributes were equalized, after all. It would be a match purely involving combat techniques. However, looking at the man now, it seemed he had merely been dreaming. He'd be lucky if he survived a few moves against Sinful Flame, much less put up a good fight. However, despite sensing Sinful Flame's unrestrained aura, Violet Cloud leisurely walked toward the center of the stage, stopping before Sinful Flame. "Shall we begin?" Violet Cloud asked sweetly. Chapter 2608, Match Between Monsters. The entire arena momentarily fell silent at Violet Cloud's words as everyone stared at the cleric girl in astonishment. Is she tired of living? Sinful Flame had already made his dissatisfaction with this upcoming match very clear through his behavior. If not for him serving as the host of this important competition, everyone was certain he would have slaughtered her already. While this was only a fighting competition without any death penalty, Sinful Flame could kill his opponent any way he wanted. Meanwhile, there were plenty of methods he could employ to humiliate Zero Wing. What is Black Flame trying to do? That's Sinful Flame. We'll lose the independent elders and grand elders' support if we anger him. Without them, how is Wonder supposed to negotiate with the Zeus Corporation? Long Wushang grew nervous as he glanced at Shifeng, who remained seated calmly in the spectator stands. Silent Wonder's progress up to this point had astounded Long Wushang. However, if they wished to change the Zeus Corporation's mind, they definitely could not do so without the support of Azure's independent elders and grand elders. Meanwhile, Sinful Flame could be said to be the representative of these independent elders and grand elders. By sending a cleric to fight Sinful Flame, Zero Wing would not only suffer a humiliating defeat at Sinful Flame's hands but also thoroughly offend the man. This was the height of foolishness. At this moment, let alone Long Wushang, even the members of the other shareholder families were at a loss for words at this situation. While it might seem a little shameful, Black Flame clearly could have stepped up to fight. In that case, Sinful Flame would enjoy himself thoroughly and more or less support Silent Wonder. However, as if thinking that it hadn't been arrogant enough, Zero Wing had actually sent a young cleric out. The guild had to be tired of living. Meanwhile, as everyone was saying a silent prayer for Violet Cloud, Sinful Flame put some distance between himself and the young cleric. You attack first. I'll give you only one chance. Let me see whether you are as strong as Wonder said. If you turn out to be a sham, I'll let you have a taste of hell. Sinful Flame said coldly as he looked at Violet Cloud. I can attack first. Violet Cloud asked strangely. That's right. If your performance doesn't meet my expectations, I'll make you regret ever standing on this stage. Sinful Flame confirmed, nodding. Then, I'll really attack now, Violet Cloud said tentatively, seeking confirmation once more. Stop with all the nonsense. I already said I'll let you attack first, so do it. This is your only opportunity. After Violet Cloud repeatedly sought confirmation, Sinful Flame very nearly lost what little patience he had left. However, before Sinful Flame could finish his words, Violet Cloud suddenly took out her staff and started chanting an incantation. Immediately, with Violet Cloud as the center, a silvery gray, twofold magic array appeared on the stage and sucked in a massive amount of mana from the arena. After this phenomenon continued for 3 seconds, the ambient mana inside the venue had become distinctly thinner. Before anyone could react to this drastic change, 22 shadow blades appeared around Violet Cloud, rotating around her and making her look like the goddess of darkness incarnate. The cleric also released a frightening aura rivaling that of mythic monsters of the same level. Everyone inside the arena could sense their basic attributes decreasing rapidly. Is she a monster? What kind of domain skill is this? Aside from my basic attributes, I can also feel my physique getting heavily suppressed. It's as if this entire space is rejecting my existence. Everyone was stunned by this situation. After all, Violet Cloud looked nothing like a sacred cleric now but more like the embodiment of darkness. Moreover, everyone could clearly sense that the space within the entire arena currently centered around her. It was as if she could decide the life and death of everything inside the venue with just a thought. Before everyone could properly react to this situation, Violet Cloud looked at Sinful Flame, 40 yards away from her, and said, I'll start now. After saying so, she lightly waved her staff. The 22 shadow blades immediately transformed into a black hole that shot towards Sinful Flame. Bronze Combat Technique, Spatial Smash. In the next moment, everything in the wake of this black hole was reduced into nothingness. The black hole's destructive power was something not even a mythic monster of the same level could receive. A bronze combat technique? How is this possible? When Duan Hanshan saw this scene, he gaped in shock. It was simply impossible for players to exhibit power at the Tier 4 standard just by relying on an ordinary Tier 3 spell. The only explanation for this situation was that Violet Cloud had executed a bronze combat technique. As to why Duan Hanshan assumed the combat technique she used was at the bronze rank instead of the advanced rank, it was because only bronze combat techniques could grant players the power to transcend tiers. However, mastering a bronze combat technique was simply too difficult. In fact, most domain realm experts in the game still hadn't managed to do so. Now, however, a little girl who was only at the Void Realm had actually executed a bronze combat technique successfully. This was simply incredible. At this moment, Solitary Frost was also astonished by this scene. A bronze combat technique. Even until now, he still hadn't managed to master a single bronze combat technique, yet a little girl much younger than himself had. Moreover, Violet Cloud had even executed her bronze combat techniques so perfectly. Now, Sinful Flame's only option was to receive her attack directly. There was simply no way he could dodge that attack of hers. Splendid. When Sinful Flame first saw the approaching black hole, surprise flashed in his eyes. In the next moment, though, excitement replaced that surprise. He swiftly unsheathed the two long swords he carried on his back and merged them into a greatsword. He then swung the greatsword at the empty space before him. Tier 3 Taboo Skill, Space-Tearing Blade. Advanced Combat Technique, Quadruple Phantoms. In the next moment, a frightening amount of mana burst out of the greatsword. As Sinful Flame swung the greatsword, the weapon split into 4 copies of itself before merging once more, the merged weapon cutting apart even space itself. Boom! When sword and black hole collided, a powerful explosion shook the entire arena. For a moment, a violent quake rocked the venue, the intense shockwave sending the players standing below the stage, stumbling several steps back. A 30-yard wide crater also appeared on the mana or stage. To everyone's surprise, though, both Sinful Flame and Violet Cloud emerged unscathed from the clash. Crap! Who is she? She actually stopped a full-powered attack from Elder Flame. Wonder was telling the truth. The members of Azure's various shareholder families goggled in shock when they saw Violet Cloud unharmed. The battle no longer looked like a contest between players, it was practically a battle between two giant monsters. Every one of their actions could shatter space and transform the terrain around them. Impossible. What kind of guild is this Zero Wing? When Duan Hanshan saw Violet Cloud continuously using her shadow blades against Sinful Flame, preventing the latter from approaching her, immense shock filled his heart. Previously, Duan Hanshan viewed Zero Wing merely as a guild seeking to gain the Azure Chamber of Commerce's support. However, Silent Wonder and Violet Cloud were now monstrously strong, despite neither of them having very high combat standards. One wouldn't be able to find such powerful youngsters even in super guilds. This was especially true for Violet Cloud. By relentlessly attacking with her shadow blades, she kept Sinful Flame at least 10 yards away at all times. This was a feat that was impossible even for Duan Hanshan, yet Violet Cloud, who was only one of Zero Wing's young talents, managed. However, as the fight on the stage intensified, the concentration both sides consumed also grew. This was especially true for Violet Cloud. Her control over her shadow blades started to decline. What a pity. Your understanding of the spiritualization realm is clearly leagues above mine. You have even given me plenty of inspiration. Unfortunately, your mental perception is still too weak. You are incapable of properly taking advantage of your superior understanding and maximizing your combat power. You are also incapable of minimizing your concentration consumption. At this rate, you'll last for at most another dozen seconds or so before being incapacitated, Sinful Flame commented while blocking Violet Cloud's relentless onslaught. This isn't an outcome I wish to see either. Originally, I intended to save this trump card for my rematch against those two people, but I'll give you a taste ahead of time. After saying so, Sinful Flame changed his footwork, his body suddenly splitting into 12 copies of itself. Bronze footwork, Shadow Prey. In the next moment, Sinful Flame's 12 doppelgangers continuously flickered, rendering all of Violet Cloud's attacks ineffective. In the end, she could only watch as he closed in on her. However, as Sinful Flame moved increasingly closer to Violet Cloud, the shadow blades surrounding her suddenly disappeared. From an outsider's perspective, it looked as if she had given up on resisting and was waiting quietly for his arrival. What's going on? Did she give up? That's reasonable. Who could possibly stop such an attack? The fact that she lasted until now already makes her one of the top-ranking existences among the younger generation in God's domain. When the spectating crowd saw Violet Cloud apparently abandoning her struggle, none of them jeered or blamed her for doing so. It was very normal for Violet Cloud to suffer defeat. After all, even among the older generation of gamers, very few people could win against Sinful Flame. When Sinful Flame got within 15 yards of Violet Cloud, the cleric suddenly sighed and stabbed her staff into the ground. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Indeed, just like the guild leader said, I am no match for you when it comes to combat standards. I am also incapable of bridging the gap, even with my mana body's potential fully unlocked. It seems I have no choice but to go all out. This is a trump card that even my guild leader isn't aware of. Violet Cloud's body started radiating much denser mana than before, her mana now many times stronger than Silent Wonder's. At the same time, the suppression effect of the cleric's domain became even more frightening, so powerful that the phantom Sinful Heart had summoned had decreased from 12 to 8. This sudden turn of events flabbergasted everyone inside the arena. Didn't she fully unlock her mana body already? Why is the density of her mana still increasing? Wasn't she using her mana body to fight before? Chapter 2609, Breaking Through the Limits. Upon sensing the powerful torrent of mana spilling forth from Violet Cloud's body, let alone the peanut gallery, even Shifeng, who had been sitting calmly in the spectator stands all this time, revealed a look of astonishment on his face. Mana burst? Violet actually broke through the limit so quickly? Shifeng muttered to himself in shock as he gazed at Violet Cloud, his shock much greater than what anyone else present in the arena felt. Breakthrough? Guild leader, what did Violet break through? Aqua Rose, who had overheard Shifeng's mutterings, could not help asking. From Shifeng's reaction, she deduced that he knew what Violet Cloud had done to become so powerful. At this moment, Aqua Rose wasn't the only person curious about this situation. The other Zero Wing members also turned to Shifeng with eyes wide with interest. They all wished to know what Violet Cloud had done to boost the density of her mana to such an extent, surpassing even that of ordinary Tier 4 NPCs. Violet broke through the shackles of the mana body, surpassing the 100% limit and entering a new realm, Shifeng explained when he saw the looks of anticipation everyone was giving him. Breaking through the limits of the mana body was something he longed to accomplish. It would improve his chances of completing his Tier 4 promotion quest and the Divine Dragon's trial. However, he never thought that Violet Cloud would actually beat him to it. He also had to admit that Violet Cloud was truly talented. Her reaching Tier 6 in the past had definitely not been a fluke. She was far more talented than the expert players who had reached Tier 6 with the help of a guild. Guild leader, doesn't the mana body reach perfection after hitting 100% potential? How can it go beyond 100%? Fire Dance asked in astonishment. After her mana body reached 100% potential, Fire Dance had gotten a sense of perfection from it. When she manipulated her mana body and used skills and spells with it, she felt that there was no longer any room for improvement. Hence, she found it truly hard to imagine that she could break through such a state. At this moment, aside from Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, Alluring Summer, Shadow Sword, Cola, and the others were also puzzled. Their mana bodies should have achieved perfection after reaching 100% potential. Even if the mana bodies could still improve, that should only happen after they had broken through the Tier 3 bottleneck and reached Tier 4. I believe some of you have achieved a completion rate beyond 100% when using skills and spells. Similarly, 100% potential is not the end for the mana body, but a new beginning. Only, the difficulty of unlocking a mana body past the 100% threshold is much greater. You can say that not even one player out of 10,000 Tier 3 experts is capable of it, Shifeng explained as he gazed at Violet Cloud with some yearning. Although I don't know how far beyond the limit Violet managed to go, it seems this fight is over. Over? Can Violet win this match? Aqua Rose asked. When she heard Shifeng saying so, she returned her attention to the stage Violet Cloud and Sinful Flame stood on. At this moment, the suppression from Violet Cloud's domain skill had reduced the number of phantom Sinful Flame created from 12 to 8. This meant a 30% decline in Sinful Flame's combat power, at the very least. Even so, Violet Cloud's chances of winning still weren't good. After all, she still had to deal with a considerable number of phantoms. She might be able to slow down Sinful Flame's approach, but she wouldn't be able to stop him from reaching her. Meanwhile, so long as a magical class allowed a melee class to get within attacking range of them, the battle would be as good as over. It might be a different story if Violet Cloud's opponent weren't a melee player but a magical class player instead. In that case, victory would definitely be possible. After all, the mana Violet Cloud currently exuded was incredibly frightening. With such mana, she could exert a powerful influence over the ambient mana around her, making it difficult for nearby magical class players to wield the ambient mana. She would have an overwhelming advantage over her opponent. Unfortunately, not only was Sinful Flame a melee player, but his class was the peak hidden class, Shadow Knight. The Shadow Knight class was like a fusion of the Assassin, Berserker, and Guardian Knight classes. It possessed the agility of assassins, the strength of berserkers, and the defense of guardian knights. To top it all off, Sinful Flame also had incredibly high combat standards. These were the reasons why Sinful Flame was publicly acknowledged as the strongest player in the Azure Chamber of Commerce. With such an opponent, Aqua Rose found it inconceivable that Violet Cloud could win. After all, stronger mana simply made Violet Cloud's skills and spells more powerful. However, skills and spells that couldn't land on their targets were useless. At this moment, Aqua Rose wasn't the only person with such thoughts. Everyone spectating this fight shared similar thoughts. After all, this was common sense in God's domain. While having powerful mana was indeed helpful to players, this advantage came into play mainly when dealing with monsters. Amazing! You are actually capable of elevating your combat power that much. With just this move, you can confidently seat yourself among the top 3 of God's domain's younger generation. Sinful Flame praised when he saw the eruption of mana from Violet Cloud. However, he did not stop his actions in the slightest. On the contrary, he further sharpened them instead. When Sinful Flame got within 10 yards of Violet Cloud, he split his greatsword into 2 longswords again and brandished them to create over 24 phantom snakes. Not only was every phantom snake incredibly nimble, but they also accurately struck at Violet Cloud's blind spots and vital points, leaving her no room to dodge or block at all. Tier 3 Skill, Shadow Assault. Advanced Combat Technique, Phantom Snakes. Sinful Flame had perfectly integrated his Tier 3 skill with his advanced combat technique, his attack making it seem as if more than 24 Grand Lords were attacking Violet Cloud simultaneously. Upon seeing this, everyone could not help but gasp. Is he still human? He's actually capable of launching over 24 attacks rivaling the power of a Grand Lord simultaneously. Who could possibly stop that? So, this is Sinful Flame's trademark move, technique integration. If I could learn even a portion of this technique, I would be unbeatable in a kingdom. But that girl from Zero Wing really is amazing. She's forced Sinful Flame to reveal his trademark move time after time. Even if she loses, she'll still rank at the top among God's domain's younger players. Although the members of the various spectating powers were in awe of Sinful Flame's techniques, they also felt admiration and envy for Violet Cloud. After all, despite her youth, Violet Cloud was pressuring a legendary individual like Sinful Flame. With such talent, Violet Cloud's future would definitely be dazzlingly bright. Given a few more years, she might become a legendary individual herself in the virtual gaming world. Meanwhile, when the 24 or so phantom snakes arrived within 1 yard of Violet Cloud, the cleric finally made a move. Disappear. Violet Cloud commanded in a low tone. Every phantom snake trying to attack her instantly vanished. Before anyone could react to the situation, the dense mana surrounding Violet Cloud transformed into shadow blades once more. This time, however, Violet Cloud had summoned 36 shadow blades. Moreover, every shadow blade left behind a pitch-black wake as they rotated around Violet Cloud. Spatial tears? Impossible. Everyone was stunned at the sight of the shadow blades rotating around Violet Cloud. The power of the shadow blades Violet Cloud summoned previously had merely rivaled that of Grand Lords. Only when she executed a bronze combat technique using the shadow blades had she exhibited power at the Tier 4 standard. However, executing bronze combat techniques consumed a lot of concentration. Hence, Violet Cloud couldn't execute Tier 4 attacks any time she wanted. She had to wait for an opportunity to land a decisive blow. Now, however, every one of her shadow blades carried power at the Tier 4 standard. The increase to her combat power was simply unfathomable. In other words, even without resorting to a combat technique, Violet Cloud could casually unleash attacks at the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, she now had 36 shadow blades under her command. At this moment, let alone the spectating audience, even Sinful Flame himself could not help being stunned by this situation. During the brief instant Sinful Flame was dazed, the 36 shadow blades surrounded him and stopped just an inch away from him. Now, any strange movement on his part would bring his body into contact with the shadow blades, subjecting him to a Tier 4 attack. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, Violet Cloud did not do anything more. She simply restrained Sinful Flame at his current position and looked at him quietly. "Ha! You really hid your strength deeply, little girl. Alright, I admit defeat." Sinful Flame sighed when he saw that sneaking out of the Shadow Blade's encirclement was impossible. Previously, Violet Cloud could execute only one Tier 4 attack at a time, so he could still put up a fight. Now, however, the young lady controlled 36 Shadow Blades carrying power at the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, judging by the girl's complexion, controlling the blades apparently did not require much concentration. With this, he really had no way to continue fighting. As soon as Sinful Flame admitted defeat, the stage bell rang, signifying the end of the match. Violet Cloud's name was displayed above the stage, along with the word, "winner." The entire arena fell silent as everyone stared at Violet Cloud. Chapter 26:10, Frightening Zero Wing. I'm dreaming, right? Sinful Flame actually lost. This is too absurd. Are you sure that girl's not an old monster in disguise? That shouldn't be the case. I feel that she might be a disguised NPC of Zero Wings. Otherwise, how could a measly Tier 3 player control 36 blades with power at the Tier 4 standard? It took a long time for the match's results to sink in. However, when everyone snapped out of their daze, they could not help but question this match, feeling that Violet Cloud wasn't human. Sinful Flame's strength was deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. Nobody present had believed that Violet Cloud could defeat him. In fact, they had initially doubted that she could even get him to take her seriously. However, Violet Cloud had not only gotten Sinful Flame to use his full strength but even defeated the man. Moreover, she had achieved such an overwhelming victory that Sinful Flame couldn't retaliate and had no choice but to concede the battle. The spectators couldn't wrap their heads around the thought of such a huge disparity in combat power between Violet Cloud and Sinful Flame. Sinful Flame represented the very apex of players in God's domain, yet a little girl in her teens just surpassed this apex, and had even done so in a situation where both sides possessed equal basic attributes. Violet Cloud's achievement defied common sense. While everyone present had seen geniuses before, even those geniuses had their limits. Violet Cloud could no longer be considered just a genius. After all, her achievements were simply impossible for current players. At this moment, let alone the various spectating powers, even the members of Azure found this situation unbelievable. This was especially true for Solitary Frost and Duan Hanshan, who stood below the stage. Wonder wasn't bluffing. When Solitary Frost thought back to the words Silent Wonder said before, he was stunned. What kind of guild is this Zero Wing? When Silent Wonder declared that there were much younger and stronger people than herself in Zero Wing, Solitary Frost had felt that she was only trying to advertise and uplift her guild. Back when he was undergoing training at Violet Sword, he had sparred with many of Violet Sword's young talents. However, less than a handful of them managed to put up a fight against him, much less defeat him. The fact that Silent Wonder surpassed him was already a miracle. Moreover, even on the Eastern continent, Zero Wing was only a pseudo-superpower. How could such a guild nurture a youngster that was stronger than Silent Wonder? Now, however, it was proven that not only had Zero Wing produced a youngster that was much stronger than Solitary Frost, but the youngster in question was even stronger than the legendary Sinful Flame. How can a little girl from Zero Wing become that strong? Could this be why the Long family insists on letting Silent Wonder remain in Zero Wing? Duan Hanshan suddenly felt enlightened as he looked at Violet Cloud before turning his gaze to Long Wushang and the other members of the Long family. Duan Hanshan was well aware of Silent Wonder's combat talent. Let alone the Long family's Silk Moon, Silent Wonder was inferior to even Yen Shaoqian in this regard. Needless to say, she was even more inferior to the combat maniac Solitary Frost. Previously, when Silent Wonder defeated Solitary Frost, Duan Hanshan could still dismiss the feat as a result of Silent Wonder having an epiphany. After all, while Silent Wonder's talents were inferior to those of the other prodigies of Azure, she was still undoubtedly a prodigy herself. It wouldn't be strange for her to raise her combat power by a large margin after gaining fresh insight. However, Violet Cloud's performance forced Duan Hanshan to conclude that Silent Wonder's sudden growth shouldn't have anything to do with gaining enlightenment at all. Instead, Zero Wing was most likely the cause. After thinking up to this point, Duan Hanshan started pondering on new plans. For Azure's various shareholder families, the younger generation represented their future. The members of the younger generation would also serve as the guild's representatives in the future. Hence, nurturing the younger generation in Azure was of paramount importance. In virtual reality games, so long as one had sufficient strength, there wouldn't be a need to worry about lacking a path. This was especially true in God's domain, which functioned as a second world for humans. God's domain could even extend the lifespan people could experience by a large margin. For people with strength, God's domain's appearance represented the start of a golden era. This was also the reason why Azure's various shareholder families were desperately trying to retain the Zeus Corporation's support. In God's domain, strength was the foundation of everything. Without strength, one would be nothing. However, while Duan Hanshan was having such thoughts, Long Wushang, who stood some distance away from him, remained in a daze. At this moment, complicated feelings roiled Long Wushang's heart. He simply did not know whether to cry or laugh. Not only had Silent Wonder won against Solitary Frost and shone brightly in the family competition, but she had even received a challenge from Sinful Flame, which boosted the opinion of Azure's independent elders and grand elders of her. Now, Violet Cloud had even beaten Sinful Flame, a feat nobody had ever dreamed of accomplishing. Zero Wing's ability to nurture talents truly surpassed Long Wushang's imagination. With Zero Wing's help, the Long family might really be able to do without the Zeus Corporation's support. After all, the Long family had funds aplenty. What they needed were only the Zeus Corporation's various resources and connections. When Long Wushang thought back to how he was planning to negotiate with Zero Wing to have it stop hindering Silent Wonder's future, he found his thoughts laughable. Meanwhile, as everyone was expressing doubt and astonishment over this match, Sinful Flame walked up to Violet Cloud. "I don't care what others say, I am sincerely convinced of my loss," Sinful Flame said earnestly as he looked at Violet Cloud. "Only, may I ask you a question?" "What is it?" Violet Cloud asked. Since Sinful Flame was so open-minded about his defeat, she did not refuse his question. Upon hearing Violet Cloud's response, Sinful Flame quickly asked, "How did you manage to elevate the density of your mana to such an extent just now? Didn't you fully unlock your mana body already?" He was filled with curiosity about Violet Cloud's sudden transformation. At the start of the fight, he had already sensed the mana Violet Cloud's body radiated, which made him absolutely certain she had fully unlocked her mana body already. The spells she used later on only served to confirm his conjecture. However, at the end of the match, the density of the mana she radiated and the power of her spells had further increased by a large margin. He simply couldn't understand how she had accomplished this feat. "It's nothing. I just managed to break through the 100% limit of my mana body, hence, I was able to release much stronger mana," Violet Cloud explained calmly. The fact that the mana body could be unlocked past the 100% threshold wasn't much of a secret. In her opinion, it was only a matter of time before an expert like Sinful Flame accomplished this feat as well. After all, if even she could break through the 100% limit, there was no way Sinful Heart, who boasted much higher combat standards than she did, could not. She had managed to do so much sooner than Sinful Flame only because of the many resources Zero Wing had provided. You can actually unlock the mana body past the 100% threshold? Sinful Flame exclaimed in surprise. Currently, he was already close to unlocking 100% of his mana body's potential. In his opinion, 100% should mean perfection. Moreover, the system should have set it to be so, as well. It never occurred to him that the mana body could be unlocked beyond 100%. Violet Cloud's words opened the doors to a whole new world for him. Then, is there anyone else in your guild that has managed to exceed 100%? Sinful Flame asked. Having experienced the strength players would gain from having a mana body unlocked beyond the 100% threshold, he knew that such players wouldn't be capable of truly fighting against Tier 4 existences. However, they would still be dosed to rivaling Tier 4 existences and were on a completely different level from ordinary Tier 3 existences. I don't know, but there are a few other people who are roughly equal in strength with me. There are also quite a few people stronger than me, Violet Cloud replied after giving the matter some thought. There are still a few others that are stronger than you? Sinful Flame reflexively turned to look at Shifeng and the other Zero Wing members seated in the spectator stands, when he heard Violet Cloud's words. He suddenly felt as if his worldview was collapsing. Violet Cloud was already inhumanly strong, yet Zero Wing actually had a few more experts that were stronger than her. Just what kind of guild was Zero Wing? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, the discussions did not continue for long before Azure's family competition resumed. Only, the subsequent matches paled in comparison to the first two matches of this competition. And to everyone's disappointment, nothing surprising occurred. In the end, Silent Wonder won first place in the competition, Solitary Frost came in second, with Yen Xiaoqian in third, and Burning Owl in fourth. The Long family thoroughly occupied the spotlight for the competition this time. Many of Azure's independent elders and grand elders even started engaging Silent Wonder in small talk, the scene rendering the members of the other shareholder families speechless. Some families were even wondering if they should approach the Long family. Solitary, what should we do? How do we explain this to the instructor? Yen Xiaoqian asked Solitary Frost, who was standing quietly beside her, when she saw Silent Wonder surrounded by Azure's independent elders and grand elders. What else can we do but tell the truth? Solitary Frost sighed. If you are afraid of telling him, I'll do it. Following which, Solitary Frost contacted Violet Sword's instructor Tori and braced himself to report everything that had happened in the family competition. Chapter 26:11, The Flame Bearer Holy Flame City, Violet Sword's residence. Inside an ancient castle made out of meteorite, over 50 level 100+ players were currently sparring and training various combat techniques. Not only did these players possess very high combat standards, with even the weakest person being at the Refinement Realm standard and the majority being at the Flowing Water Realm standard, but every one of them could also smoothly integrate their skills or spells with their combat techniques. Their level of skill was far superior to ordinary Refinement Realm experts. All of you, work harder. Activating the ancient star castle costs a lot of mana stones, and only a limited number of people can train inside it each time. If you can't pass this week's integration test, then the others waiting in line will replace you, a dark gray armored, middle-aged man with a knife scar on his face shouted as he monitored the players training inside the castle. Instructor Wildfighter, your requirements are too high. Not everybody is like Solitary Frost, able to perfectly integrate advanced combat techniques into our spells in just 1 week, a red-headed woman in blue mage robes, standing beside the middle-aged man, said while shaking her head. I have already lowered my requirements significantly. They only need to gain a basic foundation in integrating advanced combat techniques with skills or spells in 10 days. If it were Solitary Frost, I would have given him 3 days maximum. However, even though they have spent more than half of their given time, these newcomers are still stuck integrating basic combat techniques. It seems the guild's new recruits are becoming weaker with each passing generation, Wildfighter said in dissatisfaction as he eyed the group of players training before him. They are far inferior to our generation. Our generation? The red-headed woman revealed a bitter smile at Wildfighter's words. The commander was the only monster that came out of our generation. I don't think that everyone else in our generation was much better than these newcomers. Why are you being humble? Your talent is not the slightest bit inferior to Solitary Frost's. It's just that you were made to learn too many things at once. In contrast, Solitary Frost's training is very specific. Otherwise, you would have become the commander of the guild's second trump card legion by now, Wildfighter said, rolling his eyes at the red-headed woman. The redhead's name was Crimson Star. She was someone the secret pavilion had nicknamed the Thousand-Hand Witch. At the same time, she was one of the vice-commanders of Violet Sword's strongest trump card legion. In terms of combat standards, she was not the slightest bit weaker than Wildfighter. In fact, if the two of them were to have a duel, his chances of winning would be below 30%. Regardless, it seems you think very highly of Solitary Frost. You even held back during the previous match and let him finish with a draw to boost his confidence and pride, Crimson Star said. Don't say anything about this matter. I might have held back that time but only my trump card. Solitary Frost is still very young, with plenty of room for growth. It is only a matter of time before I lose to him, Wildfighter said, smiling. Moreover, isn't it because of that battle that Instructor Tori became willing to teach him? That's true. I never thought that Instructor Tori would still be willing to teach someone. I was quite surprised when I heard about it. It's a pity that the guild lacks master lifestyle players, and producing that item takes too much time. Otherwise, Solitary Frost could enter the ancient secret land and receive Instructor Tori's personal guidance. If that happened, he'd definitely be able to beat you once he came out of the secret land, Crimson Star said, nodding in agreement with Wildfighter's words. I believe it won't be long before that changes. Now that Solitary Frost's group have returned to participate in Azure's family competition, the Long family's fate is sealed. If the Long family still wishes to retain its ruling rights over Azure, they will have to listen obediently and produce that item for us. Otherwise, the Zeus Corporation will hand Azure's ruling rights to another family, Wildfighter said in a definitive tone. I heard that the Long family has a very powerful genius called Silk Moon. Her strength has always been second to only Solitary Frost. If Silk Moon secures second place in the competition, the Long family might not submit to us, Crimson Star commented. Rest assured, Instructor Tori personally provided Yen Xiaoqian with guidance and helped raise her strength considerably. So long as Silk Moon hasn't reached the domain realm yet, she'll be no match for Yen Xiaoqian, Wildfighter stated confidently. Solitary Frost might be an exceptional genius, but Yen Xiaoqian wasn't much inferior to him either. Only, she devoted much of her time to alchemy, so she couldn't capitalize on her talent in combat. However, after receiving guidance from Tori, her strength had definitely reached the peak of Void Realm experts. I don't know whether Silk Moon has reached the domain realm or not, but I stumbled across a rumor stating that the Flame Bearer is instructing Silk Moon. While I still haven't confirmed the specifics of this information, the friend I got it from says the source is reliable, so there's a 90% chance that it's true, Crimson Star warned. What? Silk Moon actually caught the eye of the Flame Bearer? How is that possible? Even when Instructor Tori personally requested the Flame Bearer to guide the commander, the Flame Bearer still rejected his request. How could that little girl catch the Flame Bearer's eye? Wildfighter was surprised at the information Crimson Star revealed. The Flame Bearer was a legend of sorts in the virtual gaming world. Nobody knew the Flame Bearer's identity. Nobody even knew the Flame Bearer's age. However, there was no doubt about the Flame Bearer's existence, as the Flame Bearer was responsible for nurturing quite a few of the virtual gaming world's shining stars. According to rumors, even Mythology's guild leader had received guidance from the Flame Bearer, which enabled him to surpass his peers and develop Mythology into one of the 5 great super guilds. Now, however, a little girl from the Azure Chamber of Commerce was rumored to be receiving guidance from the same Flame Bearer, as well. In terms of talent, Silk Moon was much worse than Solitary Frost and the current commander of Violet Sword's strongest trump card Legion, yet the Flame Bearer had actually chosen to guide her. Wildfighter couldn't bring himself to believe this. I don't know, but rumor has it that the Flame Bearer has a unique way of selecting people to nurture. Maybe Silk Moon has some special qualities of her own, Crimson Star said, shaking her head. In reality, she was also curious as to why the Flame Bearer would choose Silk Moon. If Silk Moon really is receiving guidance from the Flame Bearer, then Yan Xiaoqian is in danger, Wildfighter said worriedly. Wildfighter did not doubt that Solitary Frost would secure first place in Azure's family competition, even if Silk Moon received guidance from the Flame Bearer. After all, there was a qualitative difference between the Domain Realm and the Void Realm, preventing players from jumping from the Void Realm to the Domain Realm within a short period. Otherwise, Domain Realm experts wouldn't be so rare. However, while securing first place wasn't a problem for Solitary Frost's group, securing second place would. After all, Yan Xiaoqian still hadn't reached the Domain Realm yet. While Wildfighter and Crimson Star were having their quiet discussion, a white-haired old man entered the training hall. Upon noticing this old man, Wildfighter and Crimson Star promptly went up to greet him. This was because this old man was none other than Instructor Tori, a legendary figure in Violet Sword. However, as soon as Tori arrived, a chilly aura filled the training hall. Even Wildfighter and Crimson Star shuddered involuntarily upon sensing this aura. Instructor Tori, didn't you send Solitary Frost's group to take part in Azure's family competition? Did something happen? Wildfighter asked, curious. Judging by the chilling aura Tori released, he could tell that something was amiss. I went but had to leave for some business. However, as soon as I was done with my work, I received a message from Solitary Frost stating that they lost in Azure's family competition. Someone from the Long family secured first place. Tori snarled. They lost? Solitary Frost lost? How is that possible? Wildfighter was stunned by Tori's words. He promptly asked, could it be the Long family's Silk Moon? No. I heard that it's the Long family's second young lady, Silent Wonder, Tori replied, shaking his head. It's not Silk Moon. Wildfighter's eyes widened in shock at this revelation. For a moment, he suspected that Tori was lying to him. Isn't Silent Wonder an alchemy expert? Moreover, according to previous reports, she's only at the Flowing Water realm. How could she possibly win against Solitary Frost? In a competition where only combat standards mattered, how could a Flowing Water realm expert defeat a Domain realm expert? Now that the Long family has secured first place, doesn't that mean they will have a stable hold on Azure's ruling rights? Crimson Star asked, frowning. Master lifestyle players were crucial for Violet Sword's development, especially Master Alchemists. Meanwhile, Silent Wonder, who was only half a step from becoming a Grandmaster Alchemist, was someone Violet Sword urgently needed. You don't need to worry about that. I believe the Zeus Corporation will deal with this matter. When the time comes, the Long family will have to submit, even if they don't want to, Tori said coldly. However, Solitary Frost's group has truly disappointed me. They actually lost to a little girl who hasn't even reached the Domain realm yet. It seems I have been too lenient toward them. After they return, tell them that they don't have to meet me. Have them properly reflect on themselves. He had never once worried about Violet Sword's plan failing. Moreover, he never imagined that the group would lose to someone with significantly inferior combat standards despite him providing Solitary Frost and the others with direct guidance. This was simply humiliating. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Wildfighter was shocked when he heard Tori's words. Hurriedly, he tried to persuade Tori, saying, Instructor Tori, isn't this a little? However, before Wildfighter could say anything more, a Tier 3 assassin rushed toward them. Reporting, someone calling themselves Zero Wings Guild leader has arrived outside our residence and wishes to negotiate with our guild's upper echelon regarding the Azure Chamber of Commerce's matters. Do you wish to meet him? The Tier 3 assassin said respectfully. Zero Wing. Isn't that the guild's silent wonder has been staying at all this time? Wildfighter commented, his curiosity piqued. What are they here for? Could they be here to convince us to change our plans for Azure? An unknown guild wants to meet us. What kind of guild do they take Violet Sword for? Glaring at the Tier 3 assassin, Tori ordered coldly, tell them to get lost. Chapter 26:12, Negotiation Qualifications. Tori's harsh rejection drove a chill down everyone's spines. The players in the hall felt an intense pressure bear down on them, and some of the Refinement Realm trainees could barely even move. Instinctual fear welled within the Tier 3 assassin that had reported Zero Wing's arrival. If he hadn't been certain that he wasn't Tori's target, he would have likely turned and fled. Instructor Tori has such high hopes for Solitary Frost's group. Crimson Star was surprised to see the frosty look on Tori's face. Tori had stopped teaching people over a decade ago. She and the current commander of Violet Sword's strongest trump card Legion had been a part of his last student group. The commander had been Tori's favorite pupil. Tori had even gone to great lengths to seek the Flame Bearer's help in training the commander. Hence, Violet Sword's upper echelons had been stunned when Tori had agreed to train Solitary Frost's group. Crimson Star assumed Tori had only agreed out of respect for the Zeus Corporation, but seeing his reaction now, it seemed he had honestly wanted to help Solitary Frost's group grow stronger. If he hadn't been so invested, he wouldn't have been so furious about their defeat. I'm afraid that sending them away isn't wise, Instructor Tori. Zero Wing might not have much power on the Western continent, but it can compete with many superpowers on the Eastern continent. It even has control over the Dark World's teleportation gate. Since Zero Wing's guild leader has paid us a personal visit, others will criticize the guild if we turn him away at the door, Wildfighter tried to persuade Tori. Violet Sword was a veteran super guild. While Zero Wing wasn't based in the West, Violet Sword's intel network had investigated this smaller guild. They weren't entirely unaware of Zero Wing's background. Even if they hadn't researched the guild, it was difficult to avoid the name Zero Wing. The guild had become incredibly famous in the East, after all, and many superpowers were talking about Zero Wing. Did Zero Wing's guild leader come alone? Crimson Star asked the Tier 3 assassin. No. He came with a group of a dozen or so people. The Long family's Long Wushang is with them, as well, the assassin replied. The Long family? They certainly didn't waste any time. Wildfighter could not help but frown. After learning that the Long family's second young miss had won Azure's competition this year, Wildfighter knew it would be difficult making the family obey. Now, Azure's strongest younger member was from the Long family, and after all was said and done, the Zeus Corporation was merely one of the Chamber's shareholders. It wasn't the largest shareholder. Once the rest of the shareholders saw the Long family's potential, they would offer it their support. Threatening the Long family's dominance in Azure would become incredibly difficult. Because of this, the Long family now qualified to negotiate with Violet Sword, and it had only been a matter of time before the family sent a representative. However, Wildfighter hadn't expected the Long family to act almost as soon as Azure's family competition had ended. It seems the Long family has found its confidence. Otherwise, they wouldn't have shown up so soon, Crimson Star said. It's probably because of Zero Wing. The guild has an alliance with Netherworld Empire, after all. In addition, Zero Wing is responsible for helping Silent Wonder win the competition. Obviously, Zero Wing is quite capable when it comes to nurturing talented players. The Long family must think it'll do fine on its own, without support from Violet Sword or the Zeus Corporation, Wildfighter assumed. The most important developmental aspects for any guild were talented experts and resources. While Azure did not lack experts, it didn't have nearly as many resources as a veteran super guild like Violet Sword. If Azure wished to continue its development, it would have to ally with the super guild. This was exactly what Azure's various shareholder families and Grand Elders were pushing for. However, if Azure no longer had to worry about nurturing its talented members, neither the Long family nor the Chamber itself would bother to ally with Violet Sword. Violet Sword was already demanding a high price for this alliance, and the partnership would basically transform Azure into one of Violet Sword's vassals. None of Azure's shareholders wanted this, but they had to agree due to the immense pressure the Zeus Corporation placed on them to agree. This is interesting. Show them to the reception room and make them wait for a while, Tori decided. I'm interested to see what ability Zero Wing has to make the Long family so confident. Understood. The Tier 3 assassin breathed a sigh of relief as Tori calmed down. He then ran back to the residence's entrance. Meanwhile, a crowd had formed outside of Violet Sword's residence, embroiled in a heated discussion regarding Zero Wing's members. The group of players was just too eye-catching. Two gigantic flying mounts stood behind Zero Wing's members, an eagle, with arcs of electricity dancing across its body, and a skeletal dragon, radiating bursts of cold. Both flying mounts had auras on par with Grand Lords of the same level, and when they stood side by side, they were impossible to ignore. Crap! Who are these people? They actually have two mounts that rival Violet Sword's Netherflame Eagle. What an amazing guild! Violet Sword only has two extraordinary flying mounts, yet these people have two, as well. At this stage of the game, flying mounts were still unattainable for most of God's Domain's players. Even the various large guilds only had a few flying mounts, and most of those were common. Even so, it was enough to allow them to flaunt their strength. Meanwhile, the various super guilds would go crazy for extraordinary flying mounts, which could hold their own against Grand Lords of the same level. Not everyone could say the same. Even most Tier 3 experts would have to flee from such a monster. Only with a team of Tier 3 experts could take down Grand Lords of the same level. However, not only could a guild easily hunt Grand Lord-ranked field bosses with an extraordinary flying mount, but they could also broaden their sphere of activity, visiting far more dangerous locations in search of resources. While passers-by quietly discussed Zero Wing's two flying mounts, Long Wushang, who waited at the entrance to Violet Sword's residence, began to grow nervous. He had never thought Shifeng would go through with his claim and travel to Violet Sword as soon as Azure's family competition ended. The swordsman hadn't even given Violet Sword any time to calm down after learning of its defeat. The competition's outcome had as good as ruined the Zeus Corporation and Violet Sword's plans to take control of the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Needless to say, they'd be furious, and they'd definitely blame Zero Wing, the guild that had played a major role in foiling their plans. Although the Long family and Zero Wing now qualified to negotiate with Zeus and Violet Sword, they shouldn't push for negotiations while the other side was still fuming. Not only would they fail to change the corporation and super guild's minds, but they might make the situation worse. Wonder, can you persuade your guild leader? I know he wants to negotiate with Violet Sword, but he shouldn't do so during such a precarious time, Long Wushang whispered to Silent Wonder. At this rate, not only will negotiations fail, but Violet Sword might end up hating us. We'll lose our advantage in Azure. Azure's elders and grand elders did not particularly mind whether Azure partnered with Violet Sword or not, but becoming enemies would be a different story. If that happened, everything would be over for the Long family. Too many of Azure's key resource areas were located within Violet Sword's territories, among others. If Violet Sword decided that it no longer cared about those resource areas, the other super guilds wouldn't hesitate to fight to claim the areas. I'll try my best, Silent Wonder said. She agreed with her elder's sentiments. Zero Wing had barely any power in the West, while Violet Sword could easily deal a major blow to the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, Zero Wing couldn't avoid Violet Sword if it wished to develop on the Western continent. She did not wish to see her guild face Violet Sword's wrath over her. However, just as Silent Wonder was about to approach Shifeng, a Tier 3 assassin emerged from Violet Sword's residence and walked up to Shifeng, apologizing, sorry for the long wait, guild leader Black Flame. Please, follow me. Alright, Shifeng replied, putting away his Thunder Eagle. He then followed the assassin into the residence, giving Silent Wonder no chance to intervene. Upon entering the Super Guild's residence, both Long Wushang and Silent Wonder were stunned. Not only were the Violet Sword members in the residence very high-leveled, but quite a few of them were also Tier 3 experts. Moreover, they spotted over 100 Refinement Realm experts with a glance. When they reached the castle that acted as the residence's core, they were even more stunned as they felt such dense mana that it had condensed into a white fog. The entire castle felt ancient. All of the Super Guild's members who entered and left the castle radiated astonishingly powerful auras, while quite a few were even stronger than Azure's young geniuses. So, this is Violet Sword. Silent Wonder was amazed as she watched the dozen or so young, Tier 3 experts walk into the castle. Even a random group of players had so many Refinement Realm and Flowing Water Realm experts. Furthermore, this was only one of Violet Sword's many residences, and the guild had several training grounds. If Violet Sword gathered all of the new recruits, the sight would be awe-inspiring. "Please, come in," the Tier 3 assassin leading the way said as he gestured to the guild hall before him. When he noticed Long Wushang's and Silent Wonder's astonishment, he felt pleased and proud. Overall, Violet Sword might not be as powerful as the 5 great super guilds, but it was just as capable of nurturing talented players, which the guild was quite proud of. No ordinary super guild could compare. After a moment, the Tier 3 assassin led Shifeng and his companions into the top-floor reception room in the guild hall. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU 3 players, Tori, Wildfighter, and Crimson Star, already waited in the room. However, none of them bothered to conceal their auras, and the combined energy felt stifling. They were obviously trying to intimidate Zero Wing's representatives. Sure enough. Long Wushang could not help but shake his head when he saw the 3 people. He knew these negotiations wouldn't end well. There wasn't even a point in continuing this facade. The pressure of their combined auras was simply too powerful. Even peak experts would struggle to breathe in the reception room, much less weaker players. In Long Wushang's opinion, aside from Shifeng, Silent Wonder, and Violet Cloud, withstanding these aggressive auras would be troublesome for their party. Meanwhile, the Tier 3 assassin from Violet Sword sneered at this sight. Zero Wing might be a pseudo-superpower, but Violet Sword was no ordinary super guild, and Zero Wing had no place trying to instigate negotiations on a whim. This room is really stuffy. Aqua, why don't you guys remove your cloaks? It'll be cooler for you that way, Shifeng calmly suggested, never taking his eyes off of Tori and his 2 comrades. Chapter 26:13, Astonishing Statistics, Zero Wing's potential. Hearing Shifeng's suggestion, the Tier 3 assassin continued to sneer at the group. Do they think they can withstand the instructor's auras just by removing their black cloaks? The black cloak merely concealed some of a player's statistics but couldn't hide a player's aura. Everyone in God's domain knew this. Of course, there were tools that could conceal a player's aura, but those tools were extremely expensive and not practical. Furthermore, expert players could conceal their auras with their own skills. They didn't have to rely on such tools. Even Long Wushang gave Shifeng a strange look. He couldn't understand what the man was trying to do. By removing their black cloaks, Aqua Rose and the others would only expose their statistics. That wouldn't help them withstand these 3 monsters' auras. Tori, Wildfighter, and Crimson Star were all instructors in Violet Sword. Anyone that could become a super guild's instructor would also be a Grand Elder, absolute upper echelons in the guild. Super guilds also acquired top-tier weapons and equipment each day. A veteran super guild like Violet Sword had likely seen every kind of weapon and equipment piece the game had to offer. Now that Violet Sword was in a fit of rage and intent on striking fear into their group to chase them away, not even full sets of top-tier weapons and equipment would be enough to change these 3 instructors' minds. During the time the Tier 3 assassin and Long Wushang wondered what Shifeng intended, Aqua Rose and the others removed their black cloaks. When they saw these players' statistics, the assassin and Long Wushang nearly fainted from shock. Level 117. The moment the black cloaks were gone, these players' auras burst forth like erupting volcanoes. The ambient mana rapidly gathered around them, creating a mana vortex that thinned the rest of the mana in the room. When the Tier 3 Assassin and Long Wusheng realized that these auras rivaled that of mythic monsters, they instinctively stepped back to a tolerable distance. Meanwhile, Tori's group stared in astonishment when they saw Aqua Rose's and her companions' levels. Level 117. How is this possible? Even our guild's leveling maniac has only reached level 114. How did they get so powerful? Wildfighter exclaimed in the team chat, overwhelmed with shock as he stared at Zero Wing's players. Their levels weren't the highest in the guild since they normally trained Violet Sword's new recruits. They didn't have time to devote themselves to grinding for levels. Even so, these three had never fallen behind the frontline players. The foreign energies in level 100+ maps were a burden, steadily corroding players' bodies and preventing them from grinding for long. Thus, as instructors, Tori and his comrades had to maintain their levels. Meanwhile, these three usually trained recruits while recuperating, and as a result, their levels weren't too far behind, even if their leveling speed wasn't the greatest. All three were currently level 112, which most peak experts hadn't reached yet. And yet, the players before them had 5 levels on them. How did they manage that? Moreover, Zero Wing didn't have just 1 or 2 players at that level. All 8 members, who had removed their black cloaks, had reached level 117. No, I can sense that all of these people have fully unlocked their mana bodies. They shouldn't have used any special grinding methods to achieve such a high level, Crimson Star said, shaking her head. In God's domain, the only way to level up quickly was to grind monsters. The stronger the monsters players fought, the more EXP they'd gain. If players tried to grind monsters that were 3 levels lower than they wouldn't even earn 50% of what they did when defeating monsters of the same level. If they tried grinding monsters 6 levels lower than they wouldn't get any EXP at all. While questing was also a reliable way to earn EXP, Quest's main objective was to provide coins, weapons, equipment, and special tools. The only way to level rapidly was to face powerful monsters of the same or higher level. Because of this, no player with a high level in God's domain was considered weak. In fact, most ordinary players saw a player's level as a direct representation of their strength. Still shocked, the 3 instructors didn't realize Shifeng had walked up to them. It had felt as if he had stood in the middle of the room all this time. Can we talk now? Shifeng asked, looking at each instructor in turn. Only then did Wildfighter and Crimson Star realize that Shifeng stood before them. Out with it. Why have you come to Violet Sword? Tori asked, giving Shifeng a serious look. He no longer displayed any rage or belittlement. If Zero Wing had had only 1 player at level 117, he would have, at most, been surprised and acknowledged the expert's strength, but not only did a whole group of level 117 players stand before him, but they had also unlocked their mana body's full potential. This achievement couldn't just be the result of personal strength. Rather, it was a representation of the guild's foundation and power. Since Zero Wing had so many high-leveled experts with fully unlocked mana bodies, the guild earned his basic respect. After seeing Silent Wonder and the others himself, Tori also understood why Silent Wonder had defeated Solitary Frost. There wasn't much of a difference between the basic attributes of a player with a fully unlocked mana body and one without, but there was a colossal difference between their combat power. It was almost the difference of half a tier, which wasn't a gap that could be shortened with combat standards and techniques. Although Solitary Frost was a domain realm expert, he was still quite young. He did not have much experience fighting opponents with more raw power. Hence, suffering defeat wasn't all that strange. You're surprisingly frank, Instructor Tori. In that case, I'll just come out with it, Shifeng said, smiling at Tori, who had paid close attention to him since the moment he entered the room. I'm here to discuss Silent Wonder's situation. Guild leader Black Flame, if you wish to insist that she's a member of Zero Wing, not Azure, and thus doesn't need to develop in Violet Sword, don't bother. I will suggest that my superiors leave Silent Wonder alone, Wildfighter said. Zero Wing didn't have much power on the Western continent, but its potential was incredible. Becoming this pseudo-superpower's enemy over Silent Wonder would be truly unwise. Besides, Violet's sword could still follow through with its plans, even without a half-step grandmaster alchemist like Silent Wonder. At worst, their plans might take more time to complete. Moreover, the Zeus Corporation was the main reason that Violet's sword had insisted on obtaining Silent Wonder, and the corporation had simply made the demand because the Long family had refused to cooperate fully with Zeus's plan to unify the powers under its command. The Zeus Corporation only wanted to make an example out of the Long family and was using Violet's sword to do so. Long Wushang was stunned to hear Wildfighter give in so quickly. The matter had been dealt with, just like that. The Long family had negotiated with the Zeus Corporation and Violet's sword many times, yet the two had refused to concede. They had even gone as far as to use Azure's ruling rights to threaten the family. And yet, Shi Feng had just visited Violet Sword's residence for the first time, briefly mentioned Silent Wonder, and Wildfighter had agreed to part with her. Long Wushang felt as if he stood in the wrong guild's residence. Even Silent Wonder's mouth hung open in shock. She had never expected these negotiations to progress so smoothly. Just as everyone assumed the negotiations were over, however, Shi Feng shook his head, saying, "No, I believe you've misunderstood something. I'm not here to talk about that." "What do you wish to discuss, then?" Wildfighter asked, confused. Hadn't Zero Wing come to dissuade Violet Sword from its plans? Zero Wing would like to partner with Violet Sword. "I know your guild has uncovered an ancient secret land, which requires special tools to enter. I suggest our guilds work together." Zero Wing only wants 100 entry slots in exchange, Shi Feng said. The fact that Violet Sword had relied on an ancient secret land to boost its development speed on the western continent hadn't been a secret in the past. The moment Long Wushang had shown up in Zero Wing's residence, Shi Feng had remembered this secret land. This ancient secret land held the key to completing the Tier 4 promotion quest. It was the very reason that Violet Sword had nurtured plenty of Tier 4 experts in Shi Feng's past life. In fact, this guild had commanded nearly twice as many Tier 4 experts as ordinary super guilds. Guild leader Black Flame, are you insane? Do you know how many slots the secret land has in total? You're asking for half of the slots we have right now. Crimson Star interjected. The ancient secret land was a huge opportunity for Violet Sword to rise to prominence. Hence, every entry slot was incredibly precious, yet Zero Wing wanted half of them. Despite her conservative personality, Crimson Star accused Shi Feng of madness. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Shi Feng was merely offering the help of an advanced master alchemist. It wasn't as if Violet Sword didn't have any of its own. "What if I promise that I can help you capture the ancient secret land?" Shi Feng unhurriedly said, chuckling. "Capture it? What kind of place do you think it is? Are you going to capture an ancient secret land with just 10 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies?" Crimson Star mocked, smirking. Experts with fully unlocked mana bodies were indeed precious right now, but Violet Sword could nurture quite a few with another 2 weeks. Many of the Super Guild's experts had already made considerable progress, and the Violet Sword was more than capable of capturing the ancient secret land without Zero Wing's experts. At most, doing so might take another 2 weeks. What if I offer the help of 100 Tier 3 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies? Shi Feng asked, flashing Crimson Star a smug smile. Chapter 2614, Ancient Secret Land, Priority Pick. 100 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. Silence dominated the room after Shi Feng's question. Even Tori's gaze sharpened in an attempt to detect the swordsman's lie. "Are you telling the truth?" Tori asked. The various superpowers urgently needed experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. Only these experts could cope with the environments and monsters within level 100+, super large-scale team dungeons and hostile secret lands. Unfortunately, a handful, even just a dozen, experts with fully unlocked mana bodies would be useless during raids. A team of 100 of these experts would be a different story, however. With a full 100-man team, raiding these locations would be possible, and such a team would be invaluable to Violet Sword, which had located an immensely important, ancient secret land. Meanwhile, Long Wushang gaped at Shifeng from the reception room's entrance. He had never dreamed that Zero Wing's foundations were so frighteningly sturdy. 100 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. With these 100 experts, no superpower would dare provoke Zero Wing, even if it didn't have much power in the West. If these 100 experts decided to retaliate in the fields or cause a scene in a guild city, the targeted superpower would definitely suffer. Of course. I wouldn't have come all the way here, otherwise, Shifeng confirmed, nodding. Although Zero Wing only had a little over 24 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies right now, many of the guild's Tier 3 Refinement Realm experts had already reached 85% or higher thanks to the Lost Town special environment. At most, Zero Wing would need 3 more days to gather a full 100-man team. The raid on the ancient secret land wouldn't begin immediately. Violet Sword would need some time to prepare. Without the necessary tools, players wouldn't survive in the secret land, and by the time those tools were ready, Zero Wing should have all the experts it promised. Hence, Shifeng didn't consider his statement to be a lie. Tori and the other 2 instructors fell silent after hearing Shifeng's reply. Are we actually going to agree to his offer, Instructor Tori? This ancient secret land is likely unique in God's domain. You already know how astounding the environment is for training. Black Flame is too greedy. We have already split half the entry slots with mythology. If we give another 100 entry slots to Zero Wing, we'll have less authority there than mythology, even if we retain a spot, Wildfighter asked Tori in the team chat. The ancient secret land had a strict entry limit. It was more like an ancient city, isolated from the outside world, than a true secret land. As long as players defeated the trial boss, they become ordinary citizens in the city, enjoying the city's various benefits. To monopolize this secret land, Violet Sword had partnered with mythology, and both guilds had dispatched large armies to barricade the entrance, preventing other powers from entering. Each guild would then occupy half of the available entry slots. Violet Sword had gone to great lengths to secure 200 entry slots, yet Zero Wing wanted 100 for helping the Super Guild defeat the trial boss. No matter how one looked at it, this didn't seem like a worthwhile transaction. Given another 2 weeks, Violet Sword would be more than capable of taking the trial boss down by itself. The Super Guild didn't need any of Zero Wing's help. Crimson Star nodded in agreement to Wildfighter's comment. Guild leader Black Flame, while your proposal is tempting, you demand too much. I can offer a maximum of 10 entry slots, not 1 more, Tori said after giving the matter some thought. Even without your help, we will capture the secret land. It only may take us a few days longer. You might be right, but as far as I know, Violet Sword isn't the only power in control of the ancient secret land. Just 1 day could make a massive difference. I'm sure you're aware of this, Instructor Tori. Moreover, I don't just want 100 entry slots. I also want priority over one of the items the trial boss drops, Shifeng coolly declared, nodding. Long Wushang could only stare at the swordsman, utterly flabbergasted. How was this supposed to be a partnership negotiation? Violet Sword had clearly stated that it would succeed, with or without Zero Wing, but instead of reducing his demands, Shifeng had asked for even more, setting his sights on the trial boss's loot. He was simply insane. You're correct. We're not the only guild in control of the ancient secret land right now, but you can't ally with the other guild, can you? Zero Wing has offended mythology often in the past, Wildfighter countered with a grin. Violet Sword is Zero Wing's only prospect for an alliance. We're already being quite generous by offering 10 entry slots. If you don't like it, you'll have to find another way to enter the secret land. Zero Wing's conflict with mythology was no longer fresh news. If mythology hadn't been the only other guild to control the ancient secret land, Violet Sword might have conceded to Shifeng's demands. There was no way mythology and Zero Wing would work together at this point. Shifeng was dreaming if he thought he could claim 100 entry slots and priority over the trial boss's loot. Convinced Shifeng was a madman, Long Wushang couldn't help but shake his head. Zero Wing was immensely powerful in the east. In fact, it was so powerful that not even several superpowers could take it down. However, Zero Wing's strength was limited to the eastern continent. Even if the guild brought 100 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies to the west, it could, at most, annoy the various superpowers. Zero Wing couldn't reach the various superpowers' roots, let alone those of a veteran super guild like Violet Sword. What if we enter the secret land by ourselves? Shifeng asked, smiling. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, enter the secret land yourselves. Crimson Star Parrot, smirking. She then continued, Guild Leader Black Flame, I don't mean to belittle you, but do you know how large of a force our two guilds have stationed at the entrance? Not even 1,000 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies could dream of setting foot in the ancient secret land without our approval. To secure their hold, Violet Sword and Mythology had established a guild city around the ancient secret land's entrance. Without being able to destroy the city, no one would enter the secret land. Silently, Long Wushang nodded his agreement with Crimson Star's statement. He had visited this guild city when the Azure Chamber of Commerce had sent its lifestyle players to Violet Sword. That guild city's defenses were no weaker than the various super guilds' main headquarters. Is that so? Leisurely, Shifeng asked, but what if I have him? With that, Shifeng retrieved a Summon Guard scroll and called forth Versailles. Chapter 26:15, Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard, Life Transition. When Shifeng summoned Versailles into the reception room, the room's mana transformed. So dense. So heavy. The mana inside the reception room didn't feel like mana at all. Everyone in the room felt as if they had been submerged in water and were drowning. A Tier 4 personal guard. How is this possible? Long Wushang and the Tier 3 assassin were stunned when they saw Versailles. They had seen level 120 personal guards before. After all, every superpower in the game had a few by now, but those had only been Tier 3 personal guards. They had never seen a level 120, Tier 4 personal guard before. They hadn't even thought one existed at this stage of the game. Reaching Tier 4 was an immensely difficult feat, even for personal guards. Most player and power-owned guards couldn't even reach Tier 4. Fine Gold guards had a relatively high chance of completing their Tier 4 promotion quests, but reaching that milestone required a lot of preparation and a lot of time. Even the various superpowers' personal guards had just recently reached level 120. Thus, logically, getting one's hands on a Tier 4 personal guard at this stage should be impossible, yet Zero Wing had one. Tier 4 NPCs were the true big shots of God's domain. They qualified to rule major NPC cities and were beyond current players' reach. A Tier 4 personal guard. It seems the Eastern Continent's superpowers have grossly underestimated Zero Wing. Their assumption that your guild is powerless outside of Cold Spring Forest is severely flawed, Tori commented as he gazed at Versailles. Even after seeing the Tier 4 personal guard, he still appeared quite calm. Even so, I do not think that a level 120, Tier 4 secret silver guard can break into our two guilds' city. Although the guild city in question was only basic rank, it was protected by an incredibly powerful defensive magic array. The magic array could endure Tier 4 attacks without any trouble. Otherwise, the city wouldn't have withstood the demonic creature army's invasion. The Western continent was far more dangerous than the East. Towns and cities faced frequent demonic creature assaults. These armies especially loved to target guild towns and cities. It wasn't odd to find 3 to 5 mythic monsters among each demonic creature army, in addition to hundreds of thousands of weaker demonic creatures. Trying to rely on a measly Tier 4 NPC to threaten a guild city jointly operated by two super guilds was laughable. Of course, a Tier 4 NPC, particularly a Tier 4 Great Wizard, could destroy an ordinary guild city, but trying to destroy a superpower's guild city with a single Tier 4 NPC was ridiculous. Every guild city a superpower established would have some means of fending off or exterminating Tier 4 beings. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any difference between superpowers and ordinary powers. That's right. A Tier 4 secret silver guard would be invincible in the fields. Unfortunately, It is not enough to threaten the Superpowers Guild city, Crimson Star said after snapping out of her daze. From near the reception room's doors, Long Wushang nodded in agreement. The strength Zero Wing had just revealed was astonishing. If Zero Wing were dealing with a weaker superpower, that power might concede to Zero Wing's demands. Unfortunately, Zero Wing was dealing with Violet Sword, a veteran super guild that was almost as powerful as the 5 great super guilds. Not even 2 or 3 Tier 4 secret silver guards would be enough to change Violet Sword's mind. Indeed, a Tier 4 secret silver guard would take forever just to blast open a guild city's defensive magic array, Shifeng agreed. Smiling, he asked, but what if I have a Tier 4 fine gold ranked great wizard? Impossible. Just having one Tier 4 personal guard is a miracle. How could you have another one? Crimson Star instinctively opposed Shifeng's calm question. A Tier 4 secret silver guard wasn't strong enough to break a guild city's defensive magic array, but it would be a different story for a Tier 4 fine gold guard. Generally, fine gold guards possessed taboo skills and curses that allowed them to exhibit power beyond their tier. With the power of a Tier 4 taboo skill or curse, even shattering a city's defensive barrier with a single hit would be possible. However, rising from Tier 3 to Tier 4 was a major feat for personal guards. Even personal guards with extremely high growth potential would need to prepare extensively before challenging their Tier 4 promotion quest. Moreover, they still had a high chance of failing, and sending a large number of personal guards to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest with the hope that some would succeed wasn't feasible for current guilds. When a Tier 3 personal guard wished to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest, they needed a large number of magic cores, and not just any would do. These magic cores had to come from level 100 plus mythic monsters. Unfortunately, level 100 plus mythic monsters didn't even have a 5% drop rate for magic cores, and only demonic creatures would drop them at all. As a result, even the various super guilds could, at most, afford to send one personal guard to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest. Even if Zero Wing hunted monsters with a Tier 3 night division, there were only so many mythic-ranked demonic creatures in Cold Spring Forest. The fact that Zero Wing had nurtured a single Tier 4 personal guard was a miracle, but having 2 was simply impossible. I might have only one Tier 4 personal guard, but that doesn't mean that I can't increase his growth potential, Shifeng said before revealing a translucent, multicolored fruit. Everyone in the reception room felt physically and mentally restless the moment Shifeng retrieved the colorful fruit from his bag. Their instincts screamed at them to devour the fruit. The fruit of life? Who are you? Crimson Star demanded, staring at the colorful fruit in shock. Shifeng's Tier 4 personal guard had been surprising enough, yet this man also had the incomparably precious fruit of life. This was unbelievable. The fruit of life was legendary throughout God's domain. People had even called it the holy fruit. Not only could the fruit of life resurrect the dead, but it could also help living creatures recover to their peak and elevate their potential. There were even rumors that players could boost their life rating significantly by consuming it. If they spotted a fruit of life, even high-tiered NPCs would do everything in their power to claim it, not to mention players. In Crimson Star's opinion, though, this legendary fruit was just that, a legend. It was beyond the reach of players. The only known way to obtain the fruit of life was to harvest it from the elven race's tree of life. However, elves consider these fruits holy. They would never trade or sell the fruit to outsiders. If players wanted their own fruit of life, they could only obtain one by attacking a location that housed a tree of life. However, the elves' trees of life were so heavily guarded that not even Tier 6 gods could reach them. Moreover, most of the various kingdoms and empires' great and grand wizards had learned from elven great and grand wizards. Anyone that dared attack the elves' main headquarters would only make an enemy of these kingdoms and empires. No one under the heavens would be able to save them. Even Tori stared at the fruit in Shifeng's hand in astonishment. The fruit of life. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. The various superpowers had been desperately searching for the item after learning about it. Based on what they had learned, there was only one way, other than raiding an elven city, to procure a fruit of life. While the elves refused to trade or sell these fruits, they sometimes offered them as gifts to players who had significantly helped their race. Hence, there were quite a few fruits lying around. Only, most of these fruits of life had been given away decades, maybe centuries, ago, so no one knew their current whereabouts. Even with the superpower's powerful information networks, no one had found the slightest clue leading to these gifted fruits of life, and yet, Shifeng held one in his palm. "Eat it," Shifeng said, passing the colorful fruit to Versailles. Versailles did not hesitate, excitedly and fanatically taking the fruit. His changed attitude made the room's mana restless. After a deep, sincere bow of gratitude to Shifeng, Versailles ate the fruit of life as the players in the reception room watched. Chapter 26:16, Potential Skyrockets, World Creation. Crimson Star's and Wildfighter's eyes went wide as they watched Shifeng give the fruit of life to his personal guard with no hesitation. What a waste! The fruit of life was an incredibly rare and valuable item, far more valuable than a Tier 4 fine gold guard. That fruit could permanently increase a player's life rating or upgrade a fine gold guard to dark gold rank, drastically increasing the personal guard's chance of reaching Tier 5. Versailles was only a Tier 4 secret silver guard. Even if the fruit of life upgraded him to fine gold rank, and his combat power drastically increased, he wouldn't become much more valuable. Fine gold guards had almost no chance of reaching Tier 5. Meanwhile, players could challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest once they reached level 120, which would significantly decrease a Tier 4 personal guard's value. Using the fruit of life to help a player or personal guard reach Tier 5 would be far more beneficial than using it to boost a Tier 4 NPC's combat power. Not many in God's domain would reach Tier 5. That much was clear after seeing how few players completed their Tier 3 promotion quests. While Crimson Star and Wildfighter mourned the fact that Shifeng had wasted the fruit, a visible layer of life energy formed around Versailles. Initially, the Tier 4 Great Wizard had been old and decrepit. His aura had been frightening, but it hadn't been able to hide his fading life aura. Now, however, Versailles regained his youthful vigor at a visible rate. Not only was his life aura growing stronger, but he also began to appear younger. After 5 seconds, Versailles had gone from looking like someone in his 70s to someone in his 50s. As soon as the process ended, the mana density in the room skyrocketed. Space started to isolate the room from the outside world, with Versailles as its commander. World creation. How is this possible? Crimson Star's jaw dropped. Instructor Tori could only stare at the Tier 4 personal guard, dumbfounded. Once God's domain's NPCs reached Tier 4, they almost always gained a personal domain. These domains were the reason that Tier 4 NPCs were so powerful. The domains NPCs gained weren't a result of a skill or spell, but naturally formed. They also weren't limited like domain skills. Not only could Tier 4 NPCs easily suppress their enemies with their natural domains, but they could also elevate their own combat power. These domains were also the reason that Tier 4 NPCs could effortlessly take on a large group of Tier 3 NPCs of the same level. If players tried to challenge a Tier 4 NPC without a Tier 4 combatant, it wouldn't matter how many Tier 3 players they had, they'd all die. This was also why Tier 4 NPCs qualified to serve as magistrates in major NPC cities, while Tier 3 NPCs did not. If players tried to attack a major NPC city without strong enough fighters, they'd accomplish nothing, regardless of how many combatants they had. NPCs weren't like monsters. Tier 4 monsters were only powerful due to their basic attributes, while players relied on skills, spells, and numbers to make up the attribute differences. Even Tier 2 players could defeat Tier 4 monsters with a large enough team. NPCs, however, had an overwhelming advantage with their mana control. A Tier 4 NPC could use their mana to suppress every enemy within range. If players couldn't break free from the mana's bindings, they wouldn't even be able to put up a fight. However, Versailles had gone past obtaining a natural domain, now able to use world creation. Versailles had mastered his mana control before, but now, he ruled over it. With his will alone, he could manipulate mana, bending it to his rules as if creating a new world around himself. Normally, however, only Tier 5 NPCs could command world creation. Even Shifeng was astonished. He had never realized how amazing Versailles was. While the Fruit of Life could increase an NPC's growth potential, it wouldn't immediately alter the NPC's basic attributes or combat standards unless the NPC had some lingering injuries that weakened them. Any Tier 4 NPC with world creation was a true big shot, only one step away from reaching Tier 5. They were far stronger than ordinary Tier 4 NPCs. The difference between a Tier 4 NPC with world creation and one without was like the difference between a Tier 3 player with a fully unlocked mana body and a player that had yet to accomplish the feat. There was at least half a tier between the two. Elated, Shifeng immediately inspected Versailles' statistics. Versailles, Yifeng's personal guard, gender, male age, 76 loyalty, 93 growth potential, 90 level 120 class, Tier 4 Great Wizard crap. His growth potential is just 1 point away from the Dark Gold rank. When Shifeng saw Versailles' growth potential, realization dawned on him. Now, Shifeng was absolutely certain that Versailles' original growth potential hadn't been Secret Silver rank, but Fine Gold rank. Moreover, he should have been a Tier 4 big shot on the cusp of reaching Tier 5. The Fruit of Life simply wasn't capable of providing such a huge growth potential increase. They were talking about a whopping 16 points. Even the Fruit of Life, known as the Holy Fruit, couldn't boost an NPC's growth potential so massively. The only explanation was that Versailles hadn't fully recovered after drinking the Water of Life and had failed to recover to his full growth potential. Shifeng didn't know what had left Versailles in such a state, but he was overjoyed and ecstatic. He was even happier than when he had obtained a fragmented legendary item. He had already known that Versailles was an amazing Tier 4 NPC, but now, he learned that this personal guard even had world creation. With this, he could accomplish more than ever, including visiting many of the locations he couldn't reach during his previous life. After players reached Tier 3 and fully unlocked their mana bodies, no land in God's domain was beyond their reach. While they could even visit the most dangerous maps, however, returning would be another matter altogether. After all, level 100+ maps made up the majority of the vast continent of God's domain. The human kingdoms and empires only occupied lands suitable for their residence, which only included a small fraction of the main continent. There were far more maps that were too dangerous for humans. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Tier 3 players were still limited to relatively safe locations. They'd only be attempting suicide if they tried to explore the truly dangerous areas on the continent. They might even have an encounter that would force them to restart their account. Now that Shifeng had a Tier 4 world creation NPC by his side, however, he could visit the game's truly lethal maps. These dangerous locations generally served as the venues for Tier 4 promotion quests and contained many ancient inheritances. When the various superpowers experts had reached Tier 4 and beyond in the past, they had spent much of their time in these areas, rarely returning. They could only continue to grow stronger by exploring these maps. Realizing how much time he had spent gazing at his personal guard stats, Shifeng quickly suppressed his excitement and returned his attention to Tori and his two companions. May I know if Zero Wing now qualifies to negotiate a partnership with your guild? Shifeng asked Tori. Chapter 26:17, Secret of the Ancient Secret Land. Even after a long moment, Tori and his comrades couldn't find a proper response to Shifeng's question. Shifeng was simply too ruthless. To ensure that he'd be able to enter the Ancient Secret Land, Shifeng had wasted a Fruit of Life to upgrade his personal guard to Fine Gold rank. Not even they would dare behave so lavishly. However, they had to admit that this swordsman was extremely fortunate to upgrade his personal guard to a Tier 4 world creation NPC. With this single NPC, Shifeng could blast through a basic city's defensive magic array. Versailles could cause a huge scene inside the city, allowing Shifeng and his team to pass into the ancient secret land unhindered. Instructor Tori, Black Flame must be dreaming. Wildfighter said in the team chat. Even if he can break into the city and enter the ancient secret land, he'll only be able to do so a handful of times, at most. I refuse to believe he can come and go from our city as he pleases forever. Moreover, Mythology will have to bear half of the entry slots we lose because of Zero Wing, significantly reducing our losses. When our two guilds gain Tier 4 experts, his personal guard will be useless, and our guild will still have 200 entry slots. The ancient secret land contained an ancient city independent from God's domain's two main continents. Even if players defeated the trial boss and became citizens, they would need to remain within the city for some time to enjoy its benefits. Players wouldn't gain access to all of the city's benefits when they first reached the city. However, while Zero Wing could get into the ancient secret land, the amount of time its players could stay in the city would be limited. Players could only extend their stay with a special tool. 1 week. Even with this special tool, players could only reside in the ancient secret land for a maximum of 7 natural days. If they did not leave on time, they'd starve to death. The special tool in question also had a 10-day cooldown. In other words, Feng would have to break into Violet Sword and Mythology's guild city repeatedly to continue enjoying the secret land's benefits. Not only were the various superpowers searching for an easier way to unlock their experts' mana bodies, however, but they were also preparing for the Tier 4 promotion quests. This meant that Zero Wing had very little time left to take advantage of the secret land. Crimson Star nodded in agreement with Wildfighter's claim. There was no way their two guilds could form an alliance. After all, Zero Wing couldn't offer enough benefits to warrant 100 entry slots. Tori didn't immediately reply to Wildfighter's proposal. Instead, he closed his eyes and fell deep into thought. After some time, the man's eyes opened, and he looked at Feng, saying, "Guild leader Black Flame, a partnership between our guilds isn't exactly out of the question." Instructor Tori. Both Wildfighter and Crimson Star were surprised to hear Tori's response. Violet Sword didn't need to agree to Feng's demands, and their guild leader and grand elders would never agree to such laughable conditions. "What are your conditions?" Feng calmly asked. Feng admitted that he had demanded quite a bit, but he had no choice. This was all for the sake of helping Zero Wing's members reach Tier 4. With the guild's current resources, he could only guarantee that a few select individuals would complete their promotion quests. Everyone else's chances were minute, at best. If Zero Wing couldn't nurture enough Tier 4 experts, it would struggle to defend its current resources and territory. Too many superpowers targeted his guild, and they were only powerless against Zero Wing now due to the Night Division and its guild city's formidable defenses. However, once the era of Tier 4 dawned, destroying guild cities wouldn't just become possible, it had become common. When God's domain had reached the Tier 4 era in the past, it had been the craziest chapter of the game's history. The various superpowers had fought like madmen, destroying countless guild cities. Many had even been annihilated. This was also one of the reasons that Feng was so desperate to reach Tier 4. Although he could rely on Versailles to force his way into the ancient secret land, that wasn't a long-term plan. Allying with Violet Sword was his best option. He'd only resort to force if the Super Guild refused to work with him. "I only require that you assist us with one thing," Guild leader Black Flame, Tori said. "So long as you complete this task, we will agree to all of your conditions." "What is it?" Tori's statement piqued Feng's curiosity. He hadn't expected this man to agree to his conditions so easily. "It's quite simple. I just need you to clear the ancient secret land's hero trial," Tori declared. "Once you clear it, we'll agree to your demands, but if you fail, we'll ask you to leave. When the time comes, our guilds will rely on their own strength to enter the ancient secret land." The hero trial. Feng was a little confused. As far as he could remember, the ancient secret land's trial only had 2 difficulties, and neither was called hero. The hero trial. "Instructor Tori, that's too risky. We only have one opportunity. We will not get another chance if we fail. How can Zero Wing's people possibly complete it?" Wildfighter anxiously complained. The ancient secret land's trial only had 2 difficulties on the surface, normal and elite. However, as a bonus for activating the ancient secret land, they had the opportunity to face an even harder trial, the hero trial. As long as players cleared the normal trial, they'd become official citizens in the ancient city, enjoying the various benefits the city had to offer. However, based on Violet Sword's research, clearing the hero trial would instantly grant the players noble status. There was a huge difference between the benefits a noble had access to and those of an ordinary citizen. While players could improve their rank, rising to noble status would require a ridiculous amount of time and effort. Unfortunately, Violet Sword only had one chance to attempt the hero trial. They had originally intended to wait until the hero trial's time limit was up, which was in roughly 30 days. That way, they'd have the best possible chance of clearing the trial. However, not only had Tori just suggested they face the hero trial sooner than planned, but he also requested Zero Wings members clear it. While Zero Wings members had fully unlocked their mana bodies, their combat standards were far from satisfactory. Asking Zero Wings members to clear the hero trial would be a huge waste. If you fail the hero trial, I'd like Zero Wing to refrain from targeting the ancient secret land for 10 days. Are you willing to accept this challenge, Guild Leader Black Flame? Tori asked Shifeng. As Tori finished his question, realization dawned on Wildfighter and Crimson Star. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. While using the hero trial to gain a 10-day buffer was somewhat extravagant, it would give Violet Sword more than enough time to prepare for the normal trial. Once Violet Sword completed the trial, and its members became ordinary citizens in the ancient city, Zero Wing wouldn't be able to affect the guild's development overmuch, even if they made it into the ancient secret land. In fact, Zero Wing might not be allowed in the city as a result. Of course, Shifeng had to agree to the challenge first. Guild Leader Black Flame, do you dare to accept this challenge? Violet Sword has spent an enormous amount of resources to secure this ancient secret land. We can't simply hand over half of our available slots for nothing. You, at least, need to prove that Zero Wing can earn these slots, Crimson Star prodded, faintly smiling at Shifeng. Deal. I agree to your conditions, Shifeng replied after giving the matter some thought. However, I have an additional requirement. If you can agree to it, we will sign the contract immediately. Otherwise, as Instructor Tori has said, we will have to rely on our own strength to get into the secret land. What's this requirement? Wildfighter asked, curious. Chapter 26:18, Ancient Legacy. Earlier, I stated that I want the first pick of the trial boss's loot. That condition still stands, but I'm sure you're aware of how difficult the hero trial is. 100 Zero Wing members won't be enough to clear it, Shifeng calmly stated. Hence, I need your full cooperation. I repeat, your full cooperation. I will choose the 200 raid team members from among my people. Of course, you can send a few dozen players, as well. Once we clear the trial, we'll each take half of the given entry slots. I'm sure that's a fitting trade-off, don't you think? By the time Shifeng finished speaking, Wildfighter and Crimson Star were stunned. Neither of them had expected Shifeng to make such an outrageous demand. They had thought this swordsman would propose a more excessive condition, such as requiring Violet Sword's members to serve as cannon fodder. They had mentally prepared to watch their members die several times. However, they had never dreamed that Shifeng wouldn't demand an even higher price, but offer to include more of his guild members in the raid. Even Aqua Rose, Long Wushang, and the others near the reception room's door were flabbergasted. Shifeng's last condition meant Zero Wing would do all the work for Violet Sword. It was insane. That won't be a problem. As long as you clear the hero trial, select any raid members you want. In fact, we won't even impose a penalty if our guild members die in the raid, Tori said. Although he was similarly surprised by Shifeng's proposal, he nodded in agreement. However, our people will ignore your orders if they think the raid is impossible, and you ask them to throw their lives away. Violet Sword had already prepared for multiple team wipes if it meant clearing the hero trial. Since Shifeng's condition would reduce the number of casualties their guild suffered, Tori was more than willing to agree. If that's the case, I agree, Shifeng said, nodding. Give me 3 days. I'll lead my men to the ancient secret land in 3 days. Meanwhile, Silent Wonder will remain here to help you. 3 days should be enough time for you to prepare the necessary tools. 3 days? Wildfighter frowned slightly. He hadn't thought Shifeng would want to act so soon. He had assumed they'd have around 5 days to prepare. Including the agreed-upon 10-day buffer, Violet's sword might have been able to gather enough experts to complete the elite trial. That won't be a problem. You may enter Violet Light City in 3 days. We will be waiting for you there, Tori said. Following which, Shifeng and Tori signed a contract. If Zero Wing cleared the hero trial, Violet's sword would surrender 100 entry slots to the ancient secret land. If Zero Wing failed, the guild would be prohibited from setting foot in the secret land for 10 days. With the contract signed, Shifeng promptly left Holy Flame City. Guild leader, 3 days isn't enough time. We can't even transfer 100 players to the Western continent within 3 days, and why did you offer to bring even more of our people into this raid? Aqua Rose asked from behind Shifeng on the Thunder Eagle. Exploring secret lands always had a high casualty rate. While a team could reap plenty of benefits, Zero Wing would only receive a fraction of what this secret land had to offer. Violet's sword would gain the most benefit. Zero Wing didn't need to sacrifice so many members just to help this super guild gain access. Long Wushang found Shifeng's decision a bit odd, as well, but since he wasn't a member of Zero Wing, he was in no position to question the swordsman. If this were an ordinary secret land, I wouldn't have offered to contribute so much manpower, but we're talking about a secret land that has survived since ancient times. Moreover, we're going to challenge this land's trial, Shifeng said, smiling. What do you think a trial is? Isn't it a test of strength that grants bountiful rewards when cleared? Aqua Rose replied, confused by her guild leader's question. That much was common knowledge in God's domain. You're only half correct, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Half? Aqua Rose's confusion grew. What do you mean? A trail is also an excellent training opportunity, Shifeng explained. It is true that God's domain's trails test players' strength, but a larger part of the reason for their existence is to help players grow even stronger. This is especially true with the trials from ancient times. The rewards are only a bonus for clearing these ancient trials. The trial itself is far more valuable. These trials contain complete legacies from ancient times. Even breaking past the mana body's 100% limit could be possible if we can comprehend a fraction of these legacies. Why else would there only be one opportunity to challenge the ancient secret land's hero trial? Before players had reached Tier 4 and began to explore the game's truly dangerous locations in the past, everyone had regarded trials like dungeons, nothing more. However, once players had reached Tier 4 and begun exploring these areas, they had found one ancient trial after another. As these Tier 4 experts continued to clear the ancient trials, they continued to grow stronger. Everyone realized how important God's domain's trials were after this discovery, especially those that had survived intact since ancient times. Every ancient trial was a golden opportunity. Since Violet's sword had offered to abandon the chance to challenge the ancient secret land's hero trial, Shifeng had to take advantage of this opportunity. He had even almost failed to contain his excitement and exposed the hero trial's secrets when Tori had stated the condition. If possible, Shifeng wanted to monopolize all 200 raid slots, but Violet's sword would need a representative to claim the ancient city's entry slots, so it would have to send a few players, regardless of its desires. Guild leader, are you saying that we can use this trial to unlock more of our members' mana bodies? Excitement flashed in Aqua Rose's eyes. If this were true, they had just hit the jackpot. She had experienced ancient times training systems personally. The best example was the Extraordinary Tower. Her training was many times more efficient in that tower than anywhere else she had been in God's domain. It was also thanks to the Extraordinary Tower that she could fight Domain Realm experts, despite only having reached the Void Realm. If she and Zero Wing's other members could improve their combat standards and mana control, they'd have a much easier time with their Tier 4 promotion quests. Why would it be that easy? We only have one opportunity to face the trial. Whether you gain anything from it will depend on you, Shifeng replied, rolling his eyes. Not even 1 in 10,000 Tier 3 experts would cross the mana body's 100% threshold. How could all of Zero Wing's members make a breakthrough after facing a single trial? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This was just like with the Extraordinary Tower. Despite the tower's exceptional training mechanisms regarding the realms of truth, many Zero Wing core members had yet to reach the truth realm. Even so, this is an excellent opportunity. At least we have a chance to grow stronger. Some among us might even make a breakthrough like Violet, if we're lucky, Aqua Rose said, smiling. Long Wushang, who sat nearby, was tempted as he eavesdropped on the conversation. He had never realized that ancient trials offered such a benefit either. He had seen the strength one gained when they unlocked more than 100% of their mana body. Violet Cloud hadn't even reached the domain realm, yet she had defeated Sinful Flame. In the end, Long Wushang couldn't contain himself and asked Shifeng, guild leader Black Flame, "May I know if you'd be willing to sell some of the entry slots to Azure?" "Of course, we will pay a sufficient price. You may state any demands you wish." Chapter 26:19, Unfathomable. Zero Wing. Long Wushang's request surprised Aqua Rose and the others a little. They had never expected the man to suggest a partnership with Zero Wing. Long Wushang was an extremely prideful man. Even after Zero Wing had put on an outstanding display of strength during Azure's family competition, his attitude toward them and their guild had only improved from indifferent to normal. Rather, he merely saw Zero Wing as an equal now. The Azure Chamber of Commerce rivaled super guilds, after all, and while it might not be a match for Zero Wing and Violet Sword's gift for nurturing talented players, the Chamber's influence, resources, and manpower were far beyond that of Zero Wing. Moreover, Azure's family competition this year had only involved the younger members from the 5 main shareholder families. Not all of Azure's young talents had participated. Most of the Chamber's younger experts weren't even from the 5 main shareholder families, and some of them were even stronger than Yan Shaoqian. However, they didn't have the necessary qualifications to participate in the family competitions. "Since Azure is willing to cooperate, I don't mind selling a few slots, but how many do you want, Elder Long?" Shifeng asked, not surprised in the least by Long Wushang's request. Aqua Rose and the others, on the other hand, didn't realize how important the younger generation was to the various superpowers. To the various superpowers, the younger members were their future. Take the Azure Chamber of Commerce, for example. A large part of the reason for the guild's current achievements was the value it placed on nurturing young talents. In contrast, some first-rate guilds never rose beyond that, despite their many decades of experience, because they didn't value their younger members. Unless first-rate guilds recruited an astonishing genius, they remained first-rate for the rest of their existences. Since Shifeng had exposed the fact that players could potentially grow stronger through the ancient Secret Lands hero trial, he had expected Long Wushang to instantly consider a partnership with Zero Wing, regardless of the man's pride. Long Wushang's instincts as one of Azure's Grand Elders was also why Shifeng had fearlessly informed Aqua Rose of the hero trial's peculiarities. If he hadn't wanted anything, he would have had the discussion away from Long Wushang. Allying with Azure was of the utmost importance since Zero Wing didn't have any power on the western continent, aside from the Starlight Fortress. If Zero Wing wanted to secure a stable foothold in the west, it needed to ally itself with the local superpowers. While Divine Tribe was a powerful ally, the guild's commercial abilities couldn't compare to Azure's. Divine Tribe couldn't offer Zero Wing any assistance with intercontinental travel either. Moreover, Zero Wing already had a dialogue with Azure due to Silent Wonder. Partnering with Azure would be a safer and more reliable option. Purchasing 30 or 40 slots would be fantastic, but if that's not possible, we'll be happy with 10, as well. Guild leader Black Flame, Long Wushang hesitantly ventured after giving the matter some thought. The Azure Chamber of Commerce was a massive organization. The guild needed to nurture all of its young talents, including those from the shareholder families and those who weren't. With enough slots, he could help the rest of the guild's younger experts. Of course, if Shifeng refused, he at least had to purchase enough for the 5 main shareholder families. 40. After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng said, that's fine, but you will have to agree to 3 conditions. That's fine. Long Wushang's eyes lit up. Eagerly, he continued, please, state your conditions, guild leader Black Flame. We'll even agree to 4 or 5 demands. 40 entry slots would be more than enough for the 5 main family's young talents, but he'd also be able to include the outside experts. If this negotiation succeeded, the guild's neutral elders and grand elders would definitely side with the Long family. First, I want Azure's help with a matter. I need to transport some of Zero Wing's members to the western continent in 3 days. We'll need 100 or so, Shifeng said. That won't be a problem. 3 days is more than enough time. When the time comes, just have them gather in the Ten Saints Empire, Long Wushang agreed without hesitation. Intercontinental travel might be difficult for other superpowers, but that was no problem for Azure. Not even transporting 200 players would be a problem. At most, they'd have to spend more magic crystals. For my second condition, I want a medium shipyard and a plot of golden land in the Silvermoon Empire's Ocean Tide City, Shifeng continued. Trade between the 2 main continents would rely on naval transportation in the future. Meanwhile, Ocean Tide City was the largest port city in the Silvermoon Empire. As long as Zero Wing had roots in this city, doing business between the 2 continents would be easy. This won't be a problem either. I'll notify my eldest brother later. You can start conducting business there as soon as the handover procedures are complete, Long Wushang said, not at all surprised by Shifeng's second condition. Zero Wing had barely any territory in the west. If it wished to acquire the western continent's resources, the quickest way would be establishing itself in the west's port cities. That way, it could travel between the continents more often and transport far more cargo. After all, players could only transport a limited amount of items via teleportation. With contact between the 2 continents still being so difficult, one could resell merchandise from either area for a high price. However, those prices would fall as more powers gained the ability to travel between the east and west. Zero Wing would need to increase its sales volume to maintain a sizable income. Thus, securing a port city in the west was a must for the guild. My third requirement is the most important. I need Azure's complete Void Realm legacy, Shifeng earnestly declared, glancing at Long Wushang. Zero Wing still didn't have a complete Void Realm legacy, and because of that, it wasn't as well equipped for nurturing talented players as the various superpowers. If Zero Wing could acquire a complete Void Realm legacy, the guild's strength would reach a whole new level, becoming a true superpower. That, Long Wushang hesitated. The complete Void Realm legacy is one of the guild's core secrets. We've spent decades refining it. I'm afraid I don't have the authority to agree to that condition. While the 40 entry slots were precious, this was only an opportunity. Trading the secrets the guild had relied on to survive for one chance was absurd. Not even the guild's other elders and grand elders would agree to such an unfair demand. I know it's excessive, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You won't get a second chance. Moreover, we're talking about a legacy that has survived since ancient times. I guarantee it will contain secrets regarding the Tier 4 promotion quests, Shifeng unhurriedly explained. If that reason isn't enough, I can offer an additional benefit. What benefit? Long Wushang asked curiously. Azure's complete Void Realm legacy was one of the guild's most precious secrets. Sharing this secret with another guild would be the equivalent of weakening its foundation. A minor benefit wasn't enough of an incentive. I can help 3 of Azure's experts surpass 100% of their mana body's potential. Of course, the 3 individuals will have to be exceptionally talented. Ordinary experts won't do. What do you think? Shifeng asked, smiling. You're saying you'll help them grow as powerful as Violet Cloud, transcending tiers? Shifeng's offer astonished Long Wushang, and for a moment, he doubted the swordsman's claim. Anyone that had watched Violet Cloud's match against Sinful Flame would likely never forget her strength. She was simply too formidable. Violet Cloud's strength was no longer just a result of combat techniques or standards. She had pure power. Even with the same basic attributes as Sinful Flame, she had emerged victorious. If she had even slightly higher basic attributes, her victory would have been even more outstanding. Yet, Shi Feng now informed him that Zero Wing could nurture such monsters. That's right, Shi Feng said, nodding. To prove it, I'll even help these 3 players unlock their mana body's full potential in a day. Are you willing to accept my offer, Elder Long? Wait a minute, please. I need a moment to process this. I'll have to discuss the offer with my guild's grand elders first, as well, Long Wushang said. He could have viewed Shi Feng's offer as nonsense, but now, he couldn't afford to brush it. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. If Azure could really have 3 young monsters like Violet Cloud, it wouldn't have to worry about its future. That won't be a problem, Shi Feng said. Take your time, but I will need an answer within 2 days. Please, wait a moment, Guild Leader Black Flame. I will contact my 3rd brother now and push the Grand Elders to make a decision as soon as possible, Long Wushang said, nodding. He then contacted Long Xianglong and appraised him of the situation. When Long Xianglong heard about Shi Feng's offer in Azure's residence, he, too, was astonished. What did you say? Zero Wing can help us nurture 3 monsters on par with Violet Cloud? How is that possible? Chapter 2620, Crazed. Azure Chamber of Commerce's residence, meeting room. Normally, it was very difficult to find Azure's Grand Elders gathered in a single location, yet nearly every one of them had convened in the top-floor meeting room, and they all looked impatient. Xianglong, why did you call us here so urgently? You know how busy we are right now. All of the various superpowers are frantically searching for ways to unlock their experts' mana bodies. If we fall behind now, we'll suffer later, a woman in exquisite, white mage robes complained. That's right. If this isn't something important, you'll have to pay for our losses, a robust, middle-aged man with crimson eyes and covered in glowing runes agreed, nodding. Despite such rude questioning, Long Xianglong didn't explode in a fit of rage. He tolerated these 2 not only because they were Grand Elders in Azure, but because their strength was second only to Sinful Flames, as well. They were even stronger than Long Xianglong, the Long family's most formidable expert. Along with Triumphant Howl, they were Azure's 3 monsters, and each represented Azure's non-family members. Why isn't Triumphant Howl here yet? Long Xianglong asked, glancing at the empty seat beside the 2. You know him. Unless the guild is going to war or is at risk of destruction, he doesn't care about anything besides leveling, the crimson-eyed man said. Forget about him. Why did you call for us here? Alright, then. With 80% of the guild's Grand Elders present, we should have enough people to make a decision, Long Xianglong said, sighing. While Azure's 3 monsters were incredibly powerful, they were also free spirits. They hated restrictions and rarely listened to the ruling family's representatives. What exactly has happened, Lunatic Long? You actually used a Grand Elder mobilization order. Has something gone wrong with Violet Sword over Silent Wonder? Duan Hanshan demanded, smirking at Long Xianglong. Duan Hanshan had already learned about Shi Feng taking Silent Wonder to Violet Sword's residence the moment Azure's family competition had ended in hopes of settling the dispute between the Long family and the Super Guild. However, he doubted the issue would be so easily resolved. The Zeus Corporation's reputation was at stake, and if the Long family refused to cooperate, it would set a bad example for the other powers under the corporation's command. Even if Silent Wonder were of little significance to the Zeus Corporation's plans, it wouldn't let the matter rest so easily. Meanwhile, Zero Wing didn't have enough power in the West to convince Violet Sword to budge. If the negotiation didn't go well, Violet Sword might even move against the Long family and Zero Wing directly. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Old Ice Demon. The matter regarding Wonder has already been dealt with, Long Xianglong shot back. As a matter of fact, I've gathered you all here today to discuss good news. This matter might even affect Azure's future. Something that can actually influence Azure's development. Long Wushang left with Zero Wing to visit Violet Sword. Have we secured a partnership with the Super Guild over the ancient secret land? The white-clad woman asked, a hint of anticipation flashing in her eyes. The only thing she could think of that might affect Azure's future was the ability to nurture experts. Based on the information Azure had obtained, Violet Sword had discovered an ancient secret land that included an ancient training ground. If Azure's young experts could use this training ground, they could grow significant. Happy face, you're half correct, Long Xiangong replied, chuckling. Half. Have we not negotiated an alliance with Violet Sword? Duan Hanshan asked, confused. Correct. We're cooperating with Zero Wing, Long Xianglong said, nodding. Black Flame is willing to sell us 40 entry slots into the ancient secret land, but in exchange, Black Flame wants our complete Void Realm legacy. Is Black Flame insane? You're talking about our guild's foundation, yet he wants it for 40 measly slots. Only a fool would agree to such a partnership. Have you really gone mad, lunatic Long? Duan Hanshan said, sneering. What a joke. Azure's Void Realm legacy was the fruit of several decades of hard labor. They'd be crazy to share it with Zero Wing for a few training slots. This data was enough to help an ordinary power become a superpower in just a few short years. In fact, a large part of the reason most guilds didn't become superpowers was that they lacked effective training methods. However, as long as a guild had enough time, money, and this data, it could easily grow into a superpower. This was why the various super first-rate and super guilds rarely sold their research into the realms of refinement. Xianglong, if you've called us here to tell us this, I think it's time the Long family found a new representative, the crimson-eyed man coldly criticized. Everyone in the room gave Long Xianglong frosty looks. The Azure Chamber of Commerce did not belong to one family. It was the result of the 5 main shareholder families and a large number of non-family grand elders' exhausting work. It was unacceptable for any one member to sell the guild's secrets. I know, Long Xianglong said, not surprised by everyone's attitude in the least. He simply smiled back at them and continued, what I'm going to say next is the important part. What could possibly be so important that you felt the need to waste our time? Don't tell me Zero Wing can nurture a group of monsters, the white-clad woman said disdainfully. You've hit the nail right on the head, Belle, Long Xianglong replied, nodding at the white-clad woman named Butterfly Belle. Black Flame has promised that he can help us nurture 3 monsters that can unlock more than 100% of their mana body's potential. He's even promised that he'll help the 3 selected players reach 100% within a day. Cross the 100% threshold. Isn't that what the little girl from Zero Wing accomplished? Duan Hanshan exclaimed. Everyone that had watched the family competition had learned of how frightening Violet Cloud's combat power was. Not even a legendary expert like Sinful Flame had been her match. She was inhuman. Most ordinary powers thought unlocking 100% of the mana body could be accomplished given time, but anyone that had tried knew that the closer they got to 100%, the better their mana body performed. Unlocking 100% of one's mana body should be the maximum. However, Violet Cloud, who had broken past 100%, was definitely an extremely talented genius, and anyone that tried to replicate the feat would only be met with failure. Yet, Zero Wing declared that it could nurture inhuman experts like Violet Cloud? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I heard the girl talk about it before. It seems she's not unique in Zero Wing. She even mentioned stronger members of the guild. Sinful Flame suddenly spoke up. Based on her expression at the time, I doubt she was lying. Zero Wing should have more monsters that have crossed the 100% threshold. Everyone fell silent after listening to Sinful Flame's interruption. These elders and grand elders were already impressed that Zero Wing had nurtured a monster like Violet Cloud, but she had to be an exception. That fact would be, more or less, acceptable, but they had just been told that Zero Wing had more monsters like the girl. How could they possibly believe this? Regardless of how unbelievable it was, however, Sinful Flame was a reliable source. This is why I've gathered you all here. What is everyone's opinion of this? Do we accept the offer or not? Long Xianglong asked after sweeping his gaze across the crowded reception room. Chapter 26-21, 3 slots. Everyone in the meeting room remained silent, a fanatic light flashing in their eyes after listening to Long Xianglong's declaration. If Black Flame is telling the truth, and he can help 3 of our experts break past the 100% threshold, I think the matter should be negotiable, the crimson-eyed man said. That kind of strength would be extremely helpful during future promotion quests. If we can introduce a few Tier 4 players before the other superpowers, we'll have a head start when raiding mythic field bosses and forbidden lands that have gone untouched. We might even be able to occupy ancient ruins before anyone else has a chance. I concur. While our core secrets are essential, we'll need stronger combatants than we have now if we wish to further Azure's development. If we have a group of Tier 4 experts early on, the other superpowers won't dare target our key resource spots, Butterfly Bell said, nodding. In God's domain, the strong were revered. A strong individual might not benefit a guild when it came to resources, but they were a powerful deterrent for potential enemies, especially if those players were Tier 4 powerhouses. At this stage of the game, no one would dare think of attacking a guild city if it housed a Tier 4 powerhouse. Numbers wouldn't be nearly enough to bridge the gap between a Tier 3 expert's strength and that of a Tier 4 player. With 3 Tier 4 experts, specifically experts with extraordinary combat power for their level and tier, Azure would have an effective deterrent. Even without Violet Sword, Azure could safeguard its current resource areas. The chamber might even be able to secure more. On the other hand, keeping a tight hold on the guild's Void Realm legacy would only ensure that Azure's foundations remain steady. It wouldn't help the guild grow. Upon hearing the crimson-eyed man's and Butterfly Bell's words, the independent Grand Elders promptly nodded in agreement. One couldn't make an omelet without breaking eggs. Now that their potential gains were clearly greater than their potential losses, they had no reason to refuse Zero Wing's offer. I have no arguments against accepting Black Flame's offer, but how do we choose which 3 members to send? Duan Hanshan asked Long Xianglong. Interested to hear his answer, the Grand Elders turned toward the Long family's representative. Long Xianglong had summoned them here to discuss this topic, and Silent Wonder was a member of Zero Wing. The Long family was in the best position to negotiate this deal. These 3 training slots were incredibly valuable. If these 3 players broke past their mana body's 100% threshold, they'd rise to the apex of God's domain, even if they were merely Void Realm experts. Whatever faction these experts belonged to would gain quite a bit more authority within the Azure Chamber of Commerce. In fact, the slots distribution might cause a massive authoritarian shift in the guild. I realize what you're all thinking, Long Xianglong said, chuckling as everyone gave him serious looks. Rest assured, the Long family won't try to claim one of the slots for an unworthy candidate. Black Flame has already informed us that no random player will do. The 3 selected individuals must have incredible potential to make a breakthrough. As usual, the 5 families will have priority in selecting 2 players, and if one of their selections isn't a match for the Independence Reserve member, that player will take their place. What does everyone think? Taking the initiative, Butterfly Bell said, in that case, I nominate Boss Flame. We all know his strength and potential. I'm sure everyone can imagine how helpful he'd be to the guild if Boss Flame grows even stronger. As for the younger generation, Solitary Frost is unmatched, and we don't have anyone who can surpass Silk Moon's talent. What are your thoughts? The independent Grand Elders silently nodded their agreement to the suggestion. Normally, such opportunities were reserved for the younger generation, but Sinful Flame was Azure's strongest expert. If he could increase his strength, not only would he become a better deterrent for Azure, but he could also solidify the independent Grand Elders' authority. They didn't mind giving up a training slot for this. Duan Hanshan said nothing to oppose the idea. Rather, he was strongly in favor of the suggestion. Earlier, he had worried that the Long family would unfairly try to claim one of the 3 slots. That would leave Solitary Frost competing for the remaining slot reserved for the 5 families. While the young player had almost no chance of losing, nobody could say for certain that the independent faction of the guild didn't have something hidden up their sleeves. Now that Solitary Frost had been selected for one of the 3 slots, however, he had no issues with the arrangement. I'm afraid Silk Moon won't do. We still haven't been able to reach her, Long Xianglong said, shaking his head. Although Black Flame has given us a 2-day time limit, we should make our decision as soon as possible, just in case. I suggest we give the third slot to Yan Xiaoqian. She's almost as talented as Silk Moon. What does everyone think? Everyone in the room stared at Long Xianglong, astonished. Even Duan Hanshan's jaw almost dropped. These training slots were invaluable, yet Long Xianglong wanted to give all 3 away. Moreover, he had just suggested the Duan family claim one. The Long family and Duan family had a ceaseless feud. Now, however, Long Xianglong had just suggested one of his rival's younger members take the third slot. It was unbelievable. Inwardly, Long Xianglong could only smile bitterly as he watched shock and confusion sweep through the room. He did not wish to give this slot away either, but unfortunately, with Silk Moon absent, the Long family's only other suitable candidate would be Long Xianglong himself. Due to his rocky relationship with Zero Wing, however, he definitely couldn't go. His pride wouldn't let him. While he could have suggested they send Burning Owl, trying to convince the other Grand Elders of the boy's potential would be difficult. Azure had quite a few stronger players that were Burning Owl's age, after all. Since the Long family was going to lose its slot no matter what, he might as well do the Duan family a favor. In any case, the Long family still had Silent Wonder, and because of her, it would have plenty of chances to benefit off of Zero Wing. Moreover, sending Yan Xiaoqian instead of Burning Owl would allow Azure to fulfill Shifeng's requirements and make training easier. Her potential had already been acknowledged as only second to Solitary Frost's. Lunatic Long, we have no problems with this arrangement if you don't, Butterfly Bell calmly said. None of the other Grand Elders objected to Long Xianglong's proposal. Yan Xiaoqian was quite talented and only half a step away from the domain realm. She was undoubtedly the best candidate after Silk Moon. That settles it, then. I'll contact Black Flame after this, Long Xianglong announced, concluding the meeting. He then turned to Duan Hanshan and continued, Old Ice Demon, please prepare Solitary Frost and Yan Xiaoqian. Once we sign the contract with Zero Wing, send them to the Starlight Fortress. It will be taken care of. Once the contract has been signed, I'll take them there myself, Duan Hanshan said, nodding. Following which, everyone proceeded to discuss who they would send to Violet Sword's ancient secret land. As soon as they reached a conclusion, the Grand Elders were dismissed, leaving to prepare for the raid. An hour after the meeting had ended, Long Wushang represented the Azure Chamber of Commerce in signing a cooperative contract with Shifeng. In no time at all, not only had Shifeng gained the rights to one of Ocean Tide City's medium shipyards and golden lands, but he had also received a small warehouse in the city as a gift. Meanwhile, in Azure City's teleportation hall. Are we really going to train with Zero Wing, Uncle Hanshan? Yan Xiaoqian asked Duan Hanshan, who wore a serious expression. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to rejoin Violet Sword's training if we do. Instructor Tori might just give up on us. Although she and Solitary Frost were members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce, and where they trained at was none of Violet Sword's business, these two were considered Tori's disciples. Training with Zero Wing would be a slap in the face to Tori as if they were declaring that Zero Wing's training was more valuable. While Violet Sword's training is amazingly effective, this is a unique opportunity. Do you think securing these slots was easy? I doubt you'll get a chance like this in the future. Moreover, only Zero Wing can provide this kind of training right now, Duan Hanshan informed her coldly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, Uncle Hanshan, I agree with Xiaoqian. It is only a matter of time before we unlock our mana body's full potential, but opportunities to improve our combat standards and techniques are difficult to come by. We went to great lengths to earn Instructor Tori's guidance. If he finds out that we left to train with Zero Wing, I doubt he'll agree to train us anymore, Solitary Frost said. While he admitted that Zero Wing was quite capable when it came to helping players unlock their mana body's potential, passing up a chance to improve their combat standards and techniques for a chance to unlock their mana bodies a few days sooner was a waste. The only reason he had lost to Silent Wonder, in his opinion, was that he had yet to unlock his mana body fully. If he had, defeating her would have been a piece of cake. With enough time, anyone could unlock their mana body's full potential. Hence, he firmly believed that improving his combat standards and techniques was the true path to power. You're only going to Zero Wing to unlock your mana body. You're not there to learn techniques. It doesn't clash with Instructor Tori's training. I'm sure he won't have an issue with this, Duan Hanshan replied. It's getting late. We should hurry to the Starlight Fortress. We shouldn't make Zero Wing wait too long. With that said, Duan Hanshan led Solitary Frost, Yan Xiaoqian, and a few dozen Azure members through the teleportation array and to the closest NPC town to the Starlight Fortress. Chapter 26-22, Changes to the Starlight Fortress. Star Valley, Starlight Fortress, a long line of players, including tens of thousands, waited to enter the magnificent, ancient fortress. There were also quite a few Tier 3 players among them, creating a spectacular, stunning scene for first-time visitors. Azure's 40-man team stood at the front of the line, gazing at the Starlight Fortress in curiosity. There are so many Tier 3 experts here, one of Azure's Tier 3 players exclaimed, glancing at the line of players behind him. Tier 3 players were still incredibly rare, and even the various major powers considered their Tier 3 experts mainstays in the guild. However, Tier 3 experts were a common sight in the Starlight Fortress. Almost 1 out of every 10 players was a Tier 3 expert. It was amazing. I've heard that quite a few experts have come to the Starlight Fortress for the Demon God's legacy, but aren't there a little too many here? A level 110, Tier 3 male Guardian Knight, another Azure member, commented. He could sense that many of the Tier 3 experts he saw were Refinement Realm experts. Some had even reached the Flowing Water Realm as he had. The mana here feels different, too. It's very calming, and it somehow feels complete. Standing here, it's easier to sense mana than elsewhere, a level 109, Tier 3 female elementalist said. If I could rest and train here, my mana control would improve far quicker than training in the outside world. While Azure's young talents chatted amongst themselves, Solitary Frost and Yan Xiaoqian stared at the fortress, just as surprised by its mana as everyone else. So, this is 3 supreme elements mana. It really is extraordinary, Yan Xiaoqian muttered as she sensed the flow of mana around her. At the same time, realization also dawned. It's no wonder why so many of Zero Wing's members have fully unlocked their mana bodies. If they live in such an environment, their mana control will only grow stronger with time. They'll also have a much easier time unlocking their mana body's potential. The Starlight Fortress's mana, which contained the 3 supreme elements, was no longer a secret to the various superpowers. Only, none of the superpowers had bothered to expose this secret to the public. Naturally, independent players with keen senses had kept their mouths shut, as well, since they wanted to take full advantage of the fortress's benefits. After all, the Starlight Fortress could only house a limited number of player residents. This environment is only a close match for that of ancient times. Solitary Frost wondered, shocked as he bathed in the fortress's mana. He hadn't thought the fortress's environment, which supposedly rivaled that of ancient times, was overly important. It was only close, not the real deal. How could any location in God's domain still have the same environment as before the Great Destruction? In his opinion, the past had only had so many more powerhouses than the present because of how many complete legacies had been available during ancient times. There was no way it could have been because of some ancient environment. Of course, the environment during ancient times had been incredibly mana-dense, but all of the various superpowers had their own special training grounds with high mana density. Some of those training grounds even had mana that was far denser than during ancient times. After reaching the Starlight Fortress and experiencing its mana firsthand, however, Solitary Frost realized how sorely mistaken he had been. Even as a melee player, he could feel his mana affinity growing. Although his affinity didn't increase much, only 10% to 20% at most, this had already significantly improved his mana control. At his standards, as long as he found a good place to train within the Starlight Fortress, he'd likely unlock his mana body's full potential within just 10 days. It was no wonder how Zero Wing had nurtured so many experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. The Starlight Fortress's environment even astounded Duan Hanshan. Damn it. This isn't what I was told. According to the Intelligence Department's report, the mana here should only help players with sharp perception of mana unlock their mana bodies, not ordinary Tier 3 experts. When Duan Hanshan glanced back at the players waiting to enter the fortress, he couldn't help the urge to pummel Azure's Intelligence Department. Duan Hanshan didn't realize that Azure's intelligence reports had been, for the most part, accurate regarding the fortress's environment when it had first opened, but as time had passed, and the Starlight Fortress's magic array had continued to absorb more of the three supreme elements' mana from its surroundings, the fortress's mana had steadily improved. Now, even Tier 3 experts who barely noticed mana could reap immense benefits from the Starlight Fortress's environment. As Azure's members fell into a heated discussion over the fortress's mana, a crimson-eyed, blonde woman in silver light armor and carrying a runic greatsword emerged from the fortress. The players in line fell silent the moment they noticed this woman. She was none other than Phythalia, the Starlight Fortress's manager. Phythalia had taken care of many Tier 3 experts and teams that had tried to cause trouble outside of the Starlight Fortress. Just 2 days ago, she had single-handedly annihilated a superpower's 100-man, Tier 3 team. After her terrifying display of strength, some players, who had still considered causing trouble, abandoned the notion. Phythalia's inhuman strength was a direct result of unlocking her mana body's full potential, and now, not even ordinary domain realm experts could be her match. Greetings. You must from the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Guild leader Black Flame is currently preoccupied, so I will lead you to the Fortress Lord's mansion, Phythalia gently announced. How is this possible? Solitary Frost's eyes twitched when he saw Phythalia approach to welcome their group. He and Phythalia were old acquaintances. He had constantly tried to challenge her, and they had clashed several dozen times. Unfortunately, he had lost every match. He had hoped to challenge Phythalia again after his training with Violet Sword. However, he had never dreamed that she'd be responsible for helping Zero Wing welcome them to the Starlight Fortress. This was the commander of Divine Tribe's Divine Hymn Legion they were talking about. Commander Phythalia, I didn't expect to find you here. I thought you'd have gone to the Demon God's shrine like every other expert, Duan Hanshan said, similarly surprised to see Phythalia. The Demon God's shrine in Star Valley had become a main training ground for domain realm experts due to the few special secret lands that were connected to the shrine. Not only could players acquire treasures in these secret lands, but they could also use the areas to grow stronger. Of course, only domain realm experts and incredibly strong peak experts could take advantage of these benefits. Due to the powerful monsters and traps within the secret lands, even ordinary peak experts would meet a swift end if they tried to explore them. Moreover, entering the Demon God's shrine wasn't an easy task. One would need a lot of manpower to secure enough entry passes, and to make matters worse, each pass was a single-use item. Generally, only superpowers near Star Valley chose to send their experts to the Demon God's shrine. However, Phythalia was different. Divine Tribe had the only temporary residence within the Starlight Fortress. Entering the Demon God's shrine should be a piece of cake for her. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. While the Demon God's shrine is useful, training in the Fortress Lord's mansion's battlefield is far better. It's a pity that the battlefield can only accommodate a limited number of people, or I'd use it constantly, Phythalia said, a bitter smile forming as she shook her head. At the same time, she flashed Azure's members an envious look. Due to the recent partnership between Azure and Zero Wing, Shifeng had decided to allow these young talents to train in the Fortress Lord's mansion's large battlefield for free for a few days. There's a better place than the Demon God's shrine? The news astonished Solitary Frost. For experts of his and Phythalia's caliber, growing stronger by training was incredibly difficult. The fact that the Demon God's shrine could help domain realm experts was amazing. If not for the problem of distance and manpower, Azure's domain realm experts would have long since made their way to the shrine. And yet, Phythalia insisted that training in the Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mana was even more effective than training in the Demon God's shrine. How could he possibly believe such an outlandish claim? Let's pause our conversation for a moment. Our time is limited. We should head to the mansion immediately, Phythalia said, ignoring the confused looks Azure's members gave her and leading these players straight to the Fortress Lord's mansion. Chapter 26-23, Zero Wing's True Foundation. Starlight Fortress, Fortress Lord's Mansion. As the heart of the Starlight Fortress, the mana within the Fortress Lord's mansion had changed significantly. From the outside, it looked as if the mansion and its surroundings were encased in a layer of crystals, and the breathtaking sight attracted every passerby's attention. Amazing! The mana here is at least 50% denser than in the outside world. It's no wonder why you deem this to be an excellent training ground, Commander Phythalia, Duan Han praised as he marveled at the glittering castle before him. The Starlight Fortress's mana density had already been extraordinary. It had been so high that it had even rivaled, possibly surpassed, the various superpowers' special training grounds. However, the Fortress Lord's mansion had even denser mana. One would be hard-pressed to find another location on the Western continent with such dense mana. If players could train in such rich, special mana, their efficiency would skyrocket. Even domain realm experts like Duan Han could likely benefit from an environment with such abundant mana. However, Phythalia merely chuckled in response. Without comment, she led Azure's group into the heavily guarded Fortress Lord's mansion. When they stepped into the mansion grounds, Duan Han and his entourage from Azure were utterly stupefied. Aside from the multitude of Zero Wings experts, over 50 personal guards stood guard around the courtyard. Even the weakest of these NPCs was a secret silver guard, and there were as many as 8 fine gold guards present. These NPCs could even annihilate a 1,000-man team of Tier 3 experts. Once their surprise subsided, Azure's members realized how refreshed and light they felt, as if newer, better bodies had replaced their old ones. What's going on? Why do I feel like I have so much more physical control? Solitary Frost exclaimed as he sensed the changes. Dense mana shouldn't have such an effect. It's not just our physical control. I can feel my mana control significantly improving, as well, Yan Xiaoqian said in the team chat. It's no wonder why guild leader Black Flame is so confident that he can help us fully unlock our mana bodies quickly and cross the 100% threshold. They had experienced plenty of mana-rich environments before, including places with denser mana than the Fortress Lord's mansion, yet none of those places had affected them in this way. They hadn't moved past the mansion's front courtyard, yet Yan Xiaoqian sensed a tremendous increase to her combat power. If she could train here for a while, she was confident that she'd reach the domain realm in no time. Her mana control would reach a whole new level, as well. Sensing the changes, Duan Han turned to Phythalia and asked, Commander Phythalia, didn't our agreement with guild leader Black Flame only entail 3 training slots? Has there been some mistake? According to Azure's agreement with Shifeng, Azure would receive 40 entry slots into Violet Sword's ancient secret land. As a bonus, Zero Wing would also help 3 of Azure's members unlock their mana body's full potential and break past the 100% threshold. Aside from Sinful Flame, Solitary Frost, and Yan Xiaoqian, Azure's members had only come to the Starlight Fortress to prepare for the trip to the ancient secret land and undergo some simple training beforehand. However, Phythalia had led their entire team to this sacred training ground. There must have been some misunderstanding. There's no mistake. All of you will train here for the next few days. As for the 3 slots, those trainees will go somewhere else. Unfortunately, I don't qualify to go with them, Phythalia said, chuckling. The Fortress Lord's mansion was a one-of-a-kind training environment, so it wasn't unexpected that Duan Han would misunderstand. If possible, Divine Tribe would negotiate for a long-term alliance with Zero Wing to train in the Fortress Lord's mansion, but it had a limited number of combat rooms. To ensure its own members could continue their development, Zero Wing could only afford to lease a few of these rooms. The only reason that Zero Wing was willing to splurge and lend 40 combat rooms to Azure's members was the high price the chamber had paid. What? The 3 candidates won't be trained here? Duan Han was a little shocked. He still had his doubts that Shifeng could help Sinful Flame, Solitary Frost, and Yan Xiaoqian unlock their mana body's full potential in a single day, much less help them cross the 100% threshold. However, after witnessing the Fortress Lord's mansion, Duan Hanshan wondered if the feat were actually possible. After all, this environment drastically improved players' physical and mana control. Azure certainly had nothing like this. Not even Violet Sword had such a wondrous training environment. However, Phythalia had just clearly stated that this precious area wasn't the three candidates' trade carrot going somewhere even better. How could Duan Hanshan possibly accept such a concept as truth? Even Solitary Frost and Yen Xiaoqian wondered if the commander were playing some trick, using this as an opportunity to boost Zero Wing's reputation. After giving the matter some thought, however, they quickly dismissed these assumptions. Phythalia had no reason to lie to them. Not only was she the commander of Divine Tribe's second strongest trump card legion, but she was also a famous expert in the West. Why would she lie about such a trivial matter? You're finally here. Our guild leader has been waiting for you for quite some time. The 3 people selected for training, please follow me. Everyone else, please wait outside. While Azure's members were dazed, a man wearing Zero Wing's guild emblem approached from the castle. However, neither Duan Hanshan nor his team had noticed his presence. It felt as if this man didn't actually exist. Yen Tianqing. How is he so strong? Aren't his combat techniques basically a match for those 3 monsters? Duan Hanshan gave the man before him a suspicious look. According to the report he received on Zero Wing, Yen Tianqing was only an ordinary domain realm expert, yet he had obviously made considerable progress in the domain realm. Yen Tianqing was now entirely capable of standing toe-to-toe with Butterfly Belle and her comrades. Uncle Hanshan, should we go? Yen Xiaoqian asked. Go on. Make sure you listen to Elder Flame later, understand? Duan Hanshan said, nodding. He had only seen Zero Wing as a guild with no foundation, relying entirely on its guild leader for its success. In fact, most superpowers assumed Zero Wing's overall combat power was only on par with ordinary superpowers. However, when it came to other aspects, such as nurturing talented players, Zero Wing couldn't even compare. The guild would need a miracle to become an ordinary superpower in the future. However, Duan Hanshan realized how wrong he and the various superpowers had been after entering Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mansion. Understood. Yen Xiaoqian and Solitary Frost replied, standing at attention. Please, lead the way. Sinful Flame turned to Yen Tianqing once Duan Hanshan had finished instructing the 2 youngsters. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, follow me, Yen Tianqing responded with a nod. Yen Tianqing then led Sinful Flames 3 into the mansion's lobby and to the legacy room, which was located in the heart of the mansion. 2 level 122, tier 3, fine gold guards stood before the legacy room. Not even Sinful Flame would dare make a rash move before these 2 personal guards. When the doors parted, Sinful Flame and the 2 young experts noticed a man standing in the legacy room. He was manipulating the room's magic array, and all of the elemental mana within flowed around him. As the man continued his work, the mana around him grew astonishingly dense, eventually condensing into a white mist. Elemental control. Mana mist? How is this possible? Yen Xiaoqian stared with wide eyes, shocked, at the man within the room.